I owe you a text back, Carly, huh? About.
All good. Yeah, I figured
Sorry.
you're there. No, it's all good. Whatever. Yeah.
That was just me for this past weekend, wasn't it?
Or next, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, let's handle it today as soon as we're done here. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
We're ready to start when you are.
Okay.
Oh, cool. You already had it. Good for you.
Well, yeah. And Craig's gonna come. He's probably about maybe half an hour away, something like that.
Cool.
So I just want to make sure I know the first part. Okay, let's do it.
All right.
We ready?
We're born ready here.
I like this cool stool. All right, gang, welcome. How many of you guys? A lot of you were in Ignite for a while. You guys are taking them all, yeah. Cool. Paula, you're bold, baby. I love it. It's my bold team member right here. Getting after it. We got tomorrow's big graduation day. What have you taken from bold? Like, what is one thing you think now that you didn't think before? Is there anything like any nuggets for you?
Well, if you had asked me just now, I have had a bunch of them, but right now, let's see.
Hi. Come on in. Come on in.
That change of mindset changes everything.
And not the truth. Yeah, the bold law changed the way we look at things and things we look at change. Right? Perspective matters.
20 contacts a day seems so overwhelming at first, and I realized the other day I was getting out of the shower and it's like, oh, just 20 today. And I went, whoa.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Like you go from how am I going to talk to 20 people today to oh, I got this, no problem.
Well, it was like just 20.
Yeah, only 20. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're in a contact sport, man, you know, and it's always real estate season. So when you think about it, what we're going to talk about today is going to be kind of the logistics. Good morning, Jamie. Like we're going to talk today kind of the logistics between contract to closing and then what happens after closing and how we maintain those relationships. And at the end of the day, it's about talking to more people, right? And how we got to find more people we can help. And Twyla and I had this conversation this morning about how, man, most people, when you meet them, are they ready to buy or sell today? Most aren't, right? Maybe in a year, or talk to me after the first of the year, or maybe I'm 2 years away or whatever. So then what happens is as our business grows and we end up going, you know, putting in our time with consistent follow-up, then finally those people, their 2 years is today, or their next year is now. And so I don't want to lose sight of that. I know normally you guys are calling in the beginning, and I want to do something a little bit different today, if that's okay with you, in that I want to do some like role playing and script practice. Are you guys up for that?
Yes.
Decent? Okay. So, how are you guys doing back there?
Good.
Tell me, would you mind sharing maybe like some people that you would be calling this week? Do you have like a call list of people that you reach out to, like anybody in the back row?
Well, I'm reaching out to vendors and my sphere, basically.
Awesome.
This week.
How long have you been in real estate?
Full time, about a month and a half.
Cool, congratulations. So you're calling people now and letting them know what you're doing and that you're in real estate. How's that conversation going? Can we role play it real quick? Can I put you in the spot?
Sure.
Let's say that you're calling me and let's say that we haven't talked in 3 years.
Okay.
And I don't even have your number saved in my phone. I don't know who you, I mean, I know who you are, but I don't know that you're calling. Would that be okay?
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right, so we're gonna, hello?
Hello, Ty. Hey, this is Bob Rich. How are you?
Hey, Bob, how are you? I haven't talked to you in forever, man.
I'm back in Arizona. I was in Pennsylvania for a while. Now I'm back here and decided to kind of reignite my real estate career.
Oh, that's excellent, man. What gave you that idea?
Well, I had my license back in Pennsylvania, but had a day job, and just felt it was an opportunity here to take advantage of it.
Awesome, okay. Well, good, man, good. What else is going on in your world?
Not too much. My Cardinals they got a big win yesterday.
Wow, yeah, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, kids are doing good. Wife, how about your family?
Yeah, they're doing well. You know, we are just getting ready for the holidays. I was up on the roof putting lights on last weekend. That's always a joy. And I'm just getting ready, man. We're closing out the year strong.
Oh, cool. I just wanted to share with you, you know, what I've been doing lately with the real estate. I know if you know anybody, you know, from work or home or work or school, or anywhere that that's looking to buy or sell, buy a home, sell a house, or invest in real estate, I'd love it if you think of me.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that, man. I appreciate you calling.
All right. Is there anybody you can think of off the top of your head now?
Are you talking about in Arizona or in Pennsylvania or?
Anywhere really.
Yeah, well, I know my cousin was talking about making a move. They're in California now, and they may be looking to get out of there at some point in this coming year.
Okay. I'd love to get their contact information. I'd be able to introduce them to some great realtors in their area.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just run it by them. And I'll see what they have to say, and if so, I can. I'll let them know about you.
All right. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it. All right.
That was really good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I would have given up.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. What did he do well? What do we think as a group that he did well in that conversation?
He asked about what you're doing.
Yeah. What else?
Asked you specifically for a referral.
Yeah. I was waiting on that, and then you hit it. That was good. What do you think you could do better? Like, what would you improve on that?
Well, I think at the beginning I should have stuck with the more social interaction first, and before, hey, I'm back here with real estate now. I would have liked to have hit that with a whole bunch of things following it, as opposed to
What?
or just put it in sequence. You asked what's going on in my world, then we got into a conversation like friends would have, and I would have rather started with that, and then brought up real estate, and then continued with the real estate, rather than go back and forth.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Ford method? Are you familiar with this?
No.
So write this down. Ford, F-O-R-D. This is a method for doing exactly what you just mentioned, which is a flow of a conversation. We use this a lot, and it stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So, Bob, let's say that I'm calling you. Let's just switch that role. Is that okay?
Sure.
So, I'm calling you. Ring, ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Bob, it's Ty Lusk. How are you, man?
Good, Ty. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Hey, I just hadn't talked to you in a while, and I was thinking about you. I just wanted to call and reach out, see how it's going. How's the family? What's the latest there?
Doing good. Busy. Boys with basketball, daughter dancing all the time.
Oh, wow. It sounds like you're probably on the go quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, understandable. How's work? What's going on with your career right now?
Good. Learning a lot right now. I'm in a pretty intensive training program at work. Everything's going pretty well.
Awesome. That's good, man. You got any trips coming up or any highlights from this year? Anything you guys did as a family or you personally?
Not that I could think of. We moved to Arizona, actually.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, well, congratulations, man. How do you like it so far?
So far, so good.
What are some things you like most?
Well, I see the weather back east now, and I'm thinking it was a good decision.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure this time of year, probably, for sure. What do you have coming up? Any big goals for the upcoming year that you're working on?
Just keep moving along with my career, growing that.
Yeah, understandable.
How about you?
Well, man, yeah, a lot of real estate. I tell you, it's been an amazing year. Things have kind of started to slow a little bit, but really it's kind of stabilized out. So, we had a lot of people we were able to help here the last several years, and then things are just kind of stabilized over the last 2 or 3 months, which is a good thing in many ways because we were on this trajectory that was just go, and now people are starting to settle a little bit for the long haul. So it's kind of a natural progression we see, quite a bit. So real estate's going well, man. We're always looking for more people we can help, for sure. That's kind of an everyday thing. And then playing music, our band kind of took a hiatus to the end of the year. We've got some shows booked in January. And then, just learning, going to some self-improvement conferences, that kind of stuff. So it's been a good year. Just looking for more people we can help, down the road. Just out of curiosity, is there anybody you can think of that may be looking to make a move in the next year or two that I should be talking to? If not, it's okay. I'm just curious.
I think my niece is looking.
Oh, cool.
Eventually. She's renting for another 8 months or so.
Yeah. Where does she live now?
She's up in North Scottsdale.
Okay. And she's maybe talked about maybe wanting to buy a place at some point?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, man, we'd love to help her. One of the best ways we can do that, if you're open to it, is just start like a chain of text or email. maybe just like do a little group text to introduce, and then I can take over from there. It's, I'm certainly not going to spam her or harass her. Yet it would also be a good way for you to introduce us, and then you're out of it, and then I can help her at her pace. Are you open to that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you don't mind, we'd love to help her. Just shoot me a text, and then you copy her on it if you don't mind whenever you get a chance. And then I'd be happy to reach out to her and just kind of learn more about what she'd like to do, and then we can put a plan together that we can execute for her.
That'd be awesome.
That's great. Anybody you hear talking about real estate, if you could do me a favor, I would love to connect with them. Are you open to that idea?
Yeah, sure thing.
Cool. What can I do for you, man? What do you need right now that might make your life better?
I can't think of that.
Nothing? Like a check for $1 million?
Finish my Christmas shop?
Yeah, okay. Let's. What's your Amazon password? I'll take care of it for you. Cool. Well, Ron, hey, I appreciate you taking my call. I mean, I know your time is valuable, so I just had you on my mind. Obviously, letting everybody know what's going on. I just was really more concerned about what's going on in your world and making sure we stay in touch. Would it be okay with you if I just call you periodically and just kind of stay in touch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Good. Well, in the meantime, if there's anything you need that you can think of, please let me know. And then again, if you hear anybody talking about real estate, man, I'd love for you to connect us if at all possible.
You will do.
Cool. All right, man. I appreciate it. Have a great day. I look forward to talking to you soon. Enjoy your holidays and hug the family for me, please.
You too. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
Yep.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Twyla sits beside. Is that a conversation that you ever hear?
Yes, truly, that's fine. I hear that often.
What would you change about that? What could we do to make it better? What did you like that conversation compared to the first one? Do you notice any differences in that?
I think you dug a little deeper, finding more out about him, what was going on in his life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's important, right? Because the people want to do business with people that they like.
I think you dug to get the contact. We get that all the time where it's like, oh yeah, I'll send somebody to you, and then it never ever happens.
Right.
Yeah,
You have to
group
get
text.
that. Hey, give me that warm handout. Put us both on a group text or put us both on a group email so that we're on there together with you.
That's a good point, Rick. You know, like, think about it like this. When somebody says, hey, I need a painter. That's the next script we're going to talk about. Since I need a painter, do you go find their business card in the stack of business cards you have, or do you send them from your phone? You send a contact. Okay, we've been talking a lot about virtual business cards, right? Everybody's like, oh, give me your card, give me your card. Well, I don't have any cards. What I could do is text you over my virtual card so you've got it in your phone, so that anytime you're looking for your trusted realtor, the best realtor in the world, whatever you want to call yourself, you'll have it in your phone. So we've been talking about this idea of, we're seeing some people have success where when somebody says, hey, do you have a card? I don't. However, I'm happy to send you over via text or email my digital card or my virtual card, whatever you want to call it. And it's real simple, right? You just make yourself a contact in your phone like you would put anybody in there, upload your picture, and then that way you text them or email them your contact information. Because nobody's going to go look for your card when they hear somebody talk about real estate. Right? It has to be in their phone. They're not going to remember your name probably even, right? They may not even know your last name, maybe they know your first name, yet they'll know realtor or real estate. So in your job title, it's something along those lines, right? Realtor, favorite real estate agent, top real estate professional, whatever you want to choose to make it catchy, and a keyword. Think about keywords when we look up online, right? Or you look in your emails, you're trying to find an email and you type in that one word you can think that might be in the body of the email, hoping you can find it buried under 4,000 other emails. You been there? So the point is that these digital business cards are one way that we can actually connect. And then why do we do that? To get a phone number.
Right, yeah.
Right? If I can text it to you. Same thing with an app. We talk about open houses. You guys have had that class here. We talk about sending the app. The KW app is one of the best things we can do not because of the app, because we capture the information from the client, right? Which then puts us in the driver's seat to be able to communicate with them on a consistent and systematic basis. We got time for maybe a couple more. Who wants to go, Carly, what do you think?
Yeah, lay it on me.
Who are you talking to?
I am talking to a potential seller and buyer this week in Gold Canyon.
Awesome.
She's like 65-year-old, has some medical issues, has literally been on our nurture program for 2 years.
Wow, okay.
Because he's just had some medical stuff come up or whatever, and he's had to cancel and whatever. But now he's like, okay, I'm ready to go, and I'd love to do it like this month, like everything.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So are you gonna go do an in-person consultation?
Yeah.
Is it, okay,
Yeah, I'm going
awesome.
tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's backtrack. Let's talk about the time that you talked to them and set the appointment up.
Yeah.
Can we kind of replay that
Yeah,
conversation?
totally.
That was over the phone?
Yeah, that was over the phone.
Okay, can we just replay it?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I'm the client, you're you, ring ring, hello?
Sorry. What? Oh, I mean.
Yeah, you're you. We're gonna do a replay.
Hey Terry, how's it going?
Oh, it's going good. Who's this?
This is Carly. Thank you so much for actually you called me back. I left you a message and
Oh.
you called me back. Just so I have it.
Hey, Carly.
Thanks so much for returning my call. I was so excited when Shivani kind of told me about you and what's kind of been going on. How's it going over there in Gold Canyon?
Well, it's going good. We got a beautiful mountain day and the clouds are lifted. We're happy to be alive.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, I just wanted to, touch base with you and introduce myself. Obviously, I know you're kind of ready to start your home search journey now, and talking about selling your place. So I'd love to help you any way that I can. Tell me a bit about your situation.
Well, we love this house, but it's just a little bit more than we can really deal with right now. So I think that we may want to sell this and probably look at another one that's a little smaller. We're traveling more and we don't want to take care of as much. So just want to maybe look at what our options are to get out of this one and get something that's a little more manageable.
Absolutely, definitely. I'd love to help you and kind of run you through, what we can do for you and how we can help you best. What's your timeline looking like?
Well, we're not much of a rush. I mean, we're here for a while, so we can sell some maybe in the first, few months of the year, whenever. It's not in a big hurry.
Awesome. Okay, well, what I would love to do for you is I can offer a few kind of different searches for you. So what I like to do is set you up on a portal through the MLS. The MLS is where you're going to find your most up-to-date information. All of the other search sites you're probably on, all of that information is actually pulled straight from the MLS. So I want to make sure you're getting, the most up-to-date info. I'm going to set you up on a search. I'm going to email that over. I believe I already have your email address. It was terry123@imcool.com, right?
That's it.
Awesome. Super. So this afternoon when I'm back in my office, I'm going to send you that. But what I would also love to do is meet you in person, maybe see your home. Just talk about, how we could handle that side. Is there a time that works for you? I mean, I have Wednesday this week available.
Well, yeah, that's probably fine.
Yeah, is there a time that goes best? I actually have morning and early afternoon. Any specific time that works better for you?
Well, I think that we probably can meet around 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning.
Yeah, that sounds great. That works for me perfect. I'm going to put it in my calendar right now. I'm going to shoot you over just a confirmation email, and then we'll see you on Wednesday.
Okay, that sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking my call today, and I can't wait to meet you in person.
Okay, thanks, Carly.
Awesome. Take care, Terry.
All right, bye. All right, pretty good.
Yeah.
What did she do well?
She kept it going.
Kept it going pretty smooth, right? What do you think you can improve on?
Probably like this forward thing, the flow of it. I feel like sometimes in my calls I'm jumbling around, or I'm like, let's talk about you, and I get caught up in that, and then I need to talk about this too, or whatever. So that forward thing is really good for me.
Okay, a little bit of structure to
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to keep it casual but structured.
You had mentioned travel, and first person I thought of was Heather, when she said to keep, if you hear something about something, okay, travel, what's your travel plans, or where do you?
Yeah.
And I just thought back to her session of asking another question about something like that.
Yeah, that's really good. The other thing, the one suggestion that you might consider is you and I are very similar in that we're gonna go like 1,000 miles an hour, right? And if we talk about mirror matching, sometimes I was playing the role of somebody I imagined to be a little bit more laid back, a little bit slower in speech, right? So one thing you might consider is, because you and I are my kindred spirits,
Yes, absolutely.
is that we tend to speak quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I gotta really listen to maybe slowing that down just a little bit to make them comfortable. The golden rule is treat others as you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated.
Yeah.
Right? If you read the 5 love languages, you get this idea of what that means, right? What is it? How do they receive love, or how do they receive good customer service? So, all right, we got time for one more in this segment. Anybody else want to go for it? You're in the front row. We're gonna go for Jamie. All right, so Jamie, tell me, you've been calling a lot of. You had the Pennsylvania connection as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're gonna call somebody back in PA.
Okay.
And let's just say you haven't talked to him in a little while. Maybe you left him a message a couple months ago about him being in real estate. You haven't talked to him, and you're just calling your people to wish them happy holidays, whatever you're doing right now.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. All right. Hello.
Are you?
Wait, take two.
Are
Take two.
you, or-
I'll be whoever you want me to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey Ty, it's Jamie. How you doing?
Hey, Jamie. I'm doing awesome. I got your message. I'm like, I'm sorry I didn't call you back.
Oh, that's okay. I just was trying to check in with you, see how the fam's doing and how everything's going in your life right now.
Yeah, no, it's going well. It's just been busy. We hosted Thanksgiving, and then we're gonna go over to my parents for Christmas. So, kids are growing up. And I went to the mall on Saturday. It was a
Crazy.
lot of people there. Yeah,
Yeah, the
big
whole-
crowd.
Well, that's awesome. Anything else going on? How's work going?
It's going pretty well. Just pretty steady. We got some projects that we were kind of wrapping up here by the end of the year, and then, I'm not sure what the future's going to hold. I've been there for 8 years now, I think, and I'm not sure. I'm sure I've still got a job. I just don't know what the next project is going to be.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope you still have the job.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah. Well, I called you a few weeks ago just to check in with you. Just wanted to see how you're doing and just kind of let you know what I'm doing now. That I've moved out to Arizona and now in a real estate career, and I just wanted to give you that update and also just check in.
Awesome. Well, no, I appreciate it. Yeah. No, I saw your Facebook post. I think is what it was. Maybe it was a message you left about that. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to see if there was anybody you knew, that would be living in Arizona or moving out here, or even just referrals that, maybe we could help each other out in some way.
Yeah, no, I'll keep my ears open for sure. I don't know anybody right now, but definitely, that I'm thinking about it now. I'm happy to keep my ears open for sure.
Well, awesome. I will send you over, my updated contact info so that you can store that in your phone and just, be sending it out to anybody you know that's looking to move or, buying, selling, whatever they've got going on that may be involving real estate in Arizona.
Okay. No, yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ty. It's great talking to you.
You got it. All right. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. What's you good?
She did great with following the forward thing.
That was solid. You could hear. Now that you know about it, you'll hear that in the conversation. You did a really good job of that. What would you do better, you think?
I feel like I was fumbling a little bit just for the connection of how I could help you and vice versa, being in a different state. So I feel like maybe if I knew what you were doing, job wise,
Yeah.
it would have been more helpful so that I could add something to you, give you something of value also.
Yeah. A couple keywords you might consider. One is that we would ask who should I be in touch with? Who should I be reaching out to? Or who do you know that I should be connecting with? So it's kind of like who do you know about real estate is one thing we talk about, and it could also be who do you know that I should be reaching out to or I should be connected with? Who should I be talking to in regards to relocating, right? Or so that's a unique situation you're in, because one of these you could also talk about is one of the beauties is I get to do real estate nationwide. I've got this professional partner network of real estate professionals around the country. So no matter where you are, we're able to help you out with buying and selling nationwide. So just think about it as like your nationwide referral network, which is exactly what it is, where we're not going to be limited to just Arizona real estate. You know, I've collected referral fees from across the country for people that I just would look up an agent there, refer them. So anybody who doesn't have a sphere or has a smaller sphere in Arizona, one of the first things we're going to do is go back, we've talked about it, go back to your sphere where you came from, start to connect with other real estate professionals in those areas that you can refer to. And what's the best way to get a referral? Give one, exactly.
Right.
So what we really might want to concentrate on is the fact that number one, we were able to do real estate nationwide, wherever we all came from, because most of us grew up somewhere else. So we can practice real estate there from our referral partner network, you know, or anybody moving to Arizona, we obviously can help as well. So let's not limit ourselves in how we can help. When we're looking for a value add for somebody in Pennsylvania or like in New York in your case, right, where you've got people in both areas, that might be one way that we could add some value as to be a trustworthy. Look, you know, the other thing we've been talking about is asking these questions with anybody we meet about who do you refer real estate to? Have you ever tried this? Like that is the question. Hey, if somebody asks you for a realtor, who do you refer to?
That's a good question. Yeah.
It should be you. Most people are gonna go, I don't know, or my sister-in-law, or the guy that helped us buy our house. I can't remember his name though. Is what you're gonna hear, right? All right. Any other questions about role playing or scripts? Is that helpful? Hopefully, a little bit, kind of.
Yeah.
We're spending a lot more time on that these days.
One of the things in listening to you all the time, I don't think I've ever heard you do a phone call where you didn't ask how you can positively impact their life. And that's something that I think that the rest of us should kind of integrate into our conversations.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's true. Almost every conversation is like, hey, is there anything you need? Anything I can help you? Anybody you want to meet, I can connect you with. Like my word, we were talking about one word, right? Every year you choose a word and you go with that word for the year. So 2019 for me is connect. Like that's my new word. And like connect with other people, have a connection, connect other people together, have connections. Like for me personally, that's what the focus is going to be in 2019. So a connection might be, hey, is there anybody that you know that I should be talking to? Or is there anything you need that would make your life better? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh no, we're good. Well, if you think about anything, let me know. There's somebody you want to meet, there's an experience you want to have. I work with a lot of different kinds of people. I'm fortunate to have a lot of people in my world. So if there's anybody that you want to know, do you need a roofer, a plumber, a painter, electrician? We ask questions like, hey, this is our new favorite question. What kind of projects do you have coming up, or what kind of projects do you want to work on in your house? Rick's got a great story about that from his client appreciation event. So these are questions we can ask people, because then what happens is, well, I've got 3 great contractors or 2 really good painters. Would it be okay if I connect you with them as a way to be a resource for you? So those are some more questions we can talk about when we're scripting and role playing. Is what projects do you have coming up? What are you thinking about doing at the house? And does it make sense to maybe come have an inspection checkup to see what needs to be done with the house? These are all things that we can do to add value that are just normal conversations, yet it doesn't sound like we're calling to sell ourselves to you, or it doesn't sound like we're calling to ask you for something. We're calling to give you something. That could just be a positive affirmation. It could be, I haven't talked to you in a while, I'm thinking about you. It could be, what can I do to make your life better? Are you thinking about doing any projects? Would it be okay if I connect you with some of our professionals? That kind of stuff. Cool? Awesome. All right, let's get into bull. Yes.
Real quick
Yeah.
on that. So in some of those instances, you're not asking for anything, or are you always asking?
My go-to is typically, hey, if you hear anybody talk about real estate, can you connect us?
Okay.
Either with a warm text chain or a warm email chain.
Okay.
And in that way, it gets you've done your job as the referrer, and I can take over from there. Because a lot of times what happens is, if I hear me talking, I'll give them your number. Okay, cool. Well, let me go ahead and make sure I text you over all my information, so you've got it. You can just forward to be easy, or you can do a group text with us. That way, you're out of it. I can take over, and you've done me a massive service, I'm probably going to send you some kind of thank you gift, some kind of gift card or a dinner out or a nice bottle of wine. I'm going to do that for everyone who refers me, anybody. So that's the verbiage that I've used for that.
Okay.
And it starts with just making sure they have my contact information on their phone, which is where a virtual business card comes in.
Okay. And then your word for 2018 is?
Well, I went for health last year. This year's 11. So, meaning that if 10 is the best we can do, turn it up to 11. Yeah. So I got like a month to go on that one. Yes!
So for your virtual real estate card, I've always thought of that as the app, and you mentioned the app after that. So when you send your virtual card, what exactly do you send them?
I just go on my phone. Let's say that you were to add a contact. So you go into contacts, put plus, and you put your information. So your name, email, phone number, upload a photograph, your headshot, most likely, or whatever, some kind of fun family picture or something like that. And then that's you, right? So then you'll say, hey, I'll just text you, because that's all it is. It's nothing fancy. It's just like a contact of yourself and your phone. And then you know how you would go in and pull a contact and then share that via
So
text.
you're just sharing yourself
That's
instead of, okay.
Instead of giving you,
But
like,
have your phone number, your email, and your website all in there, so when
Right.
you send it to them, they will get
Okay,
everything.
smart, because virtual business card is really smart. I've always just been thinking of the app. So this, I mean, it doesn't seem hard, but that's smart to first send that, and then like the app or something like that too.
well, look, everybody's got cards, right? I'm like the only person who doesn't have my face on my card. Most people in real estate, that's their deal. Yeah, it hit me one day when I'm going through the stack of 800 business cards I've collected. And I'm like, I don't know, I just throw them away. Like, I don't know what to do with them. I literally got a box of business cards that I'll never go through, ever. Yet I was like, oh, I shouldn't throw them away because they're business cards. And the reality is when somebody says, hey man, I need a contractor, who do you know? Hey, I'll send you over 2 people right now. That's what I do. I share their contact from my phone, text it to them. So that would make sense that we would do that.
Yeah.
So just a thought, just a little tweak on connecting with people that we can think a little differently about it. It might be able to capture someone that might otherwise take a card and then chunk it.
Smart.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, so we're here today to close the deal. That's what we're talking about. And so far in your Ignite classes, you've done Price to Sell. You've done, I know Craig was here before. You've had Shivani and Mindy and like so many great people that have kind of taken you through the course. And now we're at a point where, okay, where you get a contract. Awesome. You work your tail off to get to this point. And then what happens, right? What is the process like? And then how are we going to communicate with the clients? And then what's going to happen after the sale? So we're really going to focus on those areas today. I may never click through a slide. We're just going to have a discussion and get your feedback. And this is the style. So hopefully you're okay with that. Let's talk about the process. The process from we have property. Let's say we're working with a buyer. And we're in the car with a buyer, and you've already learned how to show properties and how to write offers. That's already been gone over in Ignite. So now we're at a point where we get the email back. Greatest feeling. Hey, your contract, please find attached, the seller signed contract. We're excited to work with you. Here we go. Now what? What's the next thing that happens in that process? Yeah, these are all true. So what would be the very next thing? So you get the email over, and then what do you do?
Tell your clients.
That's right. Yeah, right. Now what? So let's talk about the delivery though to the client, because this is an exciting time for them. Probably an exciting time, right? So one of the things about real estate communication that we can all learn from is that the client will be highly affected by the tone that we use when we communicate with that client, whether it's good news or horrible news. Either way, they're going to be feeding off the way that, bless you. The clients many times will feed off the energy that we bring when we talk about that. So a conversation could be, hey, I've got really good news. This happened to me last night. dude, we got $15,000 trailer. We got it under contract yesterday. I was like, man. Hey, it's a 4% co-broke. That's right, $600. Yeah, I mean, literally it's a record in my career of 15 years. I'm like, the rent on the spot is like $460 a month. Dude's gonna make 15 grand. It's like not bad. I mean, you know, it's about the community center, 55 plus. He's a single man in a retirement community, so he's about to be living large.
We
Anyway,
could sell that? I didn't think we could sell it.
you gotta have DMV. Yeah, you gotta get a DMV title search and transfer. Yeah, it's wild. It's gonna be a 2.5 week
Well,
close.
we know how it goes. I just thought we weren't allowed to, so I'm always like.
What do you
oh.
mean? Sell trailers?
Yeah, I thought if we didn't own, if they didn't own the land, that our office broker didn't allow it.
Because it's not real.
I don't
Maybe
know.
you need to go downstairs.
You're just
I don't know. We'll see. Either way, it was like, congratulations, we have a deal, we made it work. The message was the same, Twyla. It was-
I give those away though.
yeah. I thought it was a misprint. I literally thought they put the comma in the wrong place. That's what I thought initially. No.
Oh, God.
I looked at the comps on my KW mobile app. Guess what? There was one for 11.5. There was one for 16,000. One for 10.4. I was like, sweet, we're in the right price range. Price per foot maybe was low.
Was that the guy we went after?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was awesome. I was happy about it. Anyway,
Well,
you know
in
why?
my mind, that's a huge thing for him, right?
Huge thing for him.
Exactly.
He's got to sell a house in Tucson. He's got to move up here. He's got, you know, I mean, it's a big deal in his life. He's getting closer to his family. I don't care about the money because I promise you right now, we're going to get a ton of referrals by the family of this gentleman who referred him to me. It's going to happen. So it's never one deal. I'll never look and say, oh, this is a $100,000 deal. Never, because if we're doing our job right, it's always multiple deals over the next many years. So it's never just that one time. So this is one of those times where we're gonna do whatever it takes. I didn't even look at it. I didn't even know like how you price it. I didn't even care. Like, let's just get the deal done. Hopefully our broker, hopefully Jim will let us know. I'll talk to him after we get done today, Jim. Anyway. Oh, there comes the man. Come on in. You're the one we're talking about. Give it up for Kenny Klaus. Yeah. Come on in, brother. Hey, are we allowed to sell trailers? Around lease land?
Good question. Rick's gonna be our guinea pig for that, actually.
Call Bernasconi, he'll know.
Yeah.
Or Ty's already volunteered himself under his smile. We're just through that, Ty.
The answer was we don't know.
We don't know. We're gonna find out. We got a contract now. I put it in the portal this morning. I got one on the board.
15,000.
Yeah.
The answer from Jim was it hasn't been tested yet, and so that nobody really knows the answer.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, we'll let you know what happens. By step 13, we'll know.
From our E&O insurance, they didn't have an answer for me. So.
Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah.
So you guys, most of you know Craig. He's our listing specialist, listing manager, listing guru, listing god. I don't know what your title is, but you do a lot of listings.
Yeah.
So we're talking today about like contract or closing. So what I thought we could do, if you guys are okay with it, is I'm going to kind of take the buy side. If you can take the seller side, because most of us are working with both listings and buyers, right? So you've done over 100 listings this year already. You've closed.
Written about 150, closed 116.
Yeah, nobody does that, by the way. So what I want, if you're okay with it, I'd like for you to kind of give us your, we'll go back and forth, and then you'll be the perspective of the listing agent as you are. I'll take the buyer's agent role today, and we're just talking about communication with clients and the actual process that we go through so we can explain this to buyers. Have you ever had a buyer who came to you who's never purchased a home before?
Yes.
Have they ever asked you, well, what happens in the process? We're going to answer those questions today, and we're going to talk about simplified ways of explaining that to the buyer so it's not overwhelming, and kind of how the communication would go best case scenario. Fair? Okay, so we get a contract. So we submit an offer to you, and what is your process at that time? Let's say it's a regular, not institutional seller, it's a regular person that's selling a house. And so as a buyer agent, I submit my offer to you. What happens on your end then?
So typically the first thing we're gonna do is look through it. Obviously, we're gonna make sure everything that's there is supposed to be there. Look for the pre-qual, and make sure we have in our listing agreements, for example, that the seller has instructed us to not present an offer to them if it's cash, if they do not have proof of funds at the time of the offer, or if they have not submitted W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns, had down payment reserves verified by their lender. So if those boxes are checked no, then the first process would be to call the buyer's agent, call the lender and say, look, where are we at with this? Why? We need to have this done. Assuming that's been done, typically still call the lender, have a conversation with them, how long they've been working with the buyer, and make sure that they've collected all those things, explain to them through our success team, through our transaction coordinators, where we're gonna require weekly loan status updates. Crazy as we are, we expect docs to be the title 3 days prior, as the contract says. So that's something we're expectation. Then I would do what's called an estimated net proceeds sheet, scan all that in, send it to my seller at that point, and then usually give them a little bit of time and then follow up with them and discuss it.
Okay, awesome. So if I'm submitting a contract to you or an offer to you that has a pre-qual that's credit only, they haven't looked at the pay stubs or the bank statements, they've just run credit, they haven't checked income or assets. First of all, you're not obligated, in our world, we're not obligated to submit that to the seller.
Correct.
You may choose to do that, but only after, if I'm hearing you, you're gonna call the lender and find out why.
Yeah, so we put that in there. I mean, we've always kind of had that policy, but because legally we're supposed to present all offers, so we years ago met with Jim and said, and so we said, let's put that in your listing agreements, that the seller has in writing instructed us not to do that. And so then I just go back to them and say, look, I can't, where you run into issues more so than anything is USAA, for example, as a mortgage, as a lender, they will not collect those documents until they have a purchase contract. It is their system. I've talked to agents, LOs from there. I had one deal where the LOs basically said, I have everything, I can't upload it. Like our systems will not allow us to upload that stuff. So then it becomes a conversation, okay, where we at, have a feel, and then a decision we have to make with our seller at that point. So when going through a listing appointment and we go through that language in the listing agreement, I always tell them, I'm going to tell you about the offer no matter what, but I'm not legally presented. And what it does is allows me to go back to the agent and say, you got to follow these steps first. And so we'll still discuss the offer, and then depending on the conversation with the lender, depending on the offer, depending on the seller, make a decision on whether or not we're going to move forward, take that chance, or whether or not we're going to hold off until they get that done.
Awesome. So let's just say that we were good agents and we submitted everything we needed to you, and the seller says, hey, that seems fair, it's a little below our list price, and they don't want any concessions, and then we'll pay for their warranty, we're okay with this, we're not gonna counter. So then what happens in your world? You send them a DocuSign, they sign it, and you send everything back to the buyer's agent. So it comes to me, right? And then my next move is then to make sure that we've got everything we need, right? Everything is complete in the file. Then my first call is going to be to the client. Hey, I got some great news. So they're going to accept your offer. Here's what happens next. Okay, we're never ever going to finish a conversation with a buyer or a seller without saying that, hey, the next thing that happens will be, or here's what happens next. It's a phrase that you're going to want to just get embedded and use every time you talk to a client who's in a process. They don't need to know 5 steps from now. They need to know what happens next. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're going to call them. So here's what we need to do. Now we've got to open escrow now within 24 hours. So we need to get a check. If they're out of state, we're going to get wiring instructions from escrow. We're going to mail those wiring instructions. Most of them use embedded emails now, or encrypted rather, emails now because of wire fraud. So we'll have the conversation. One of the forms they're going to sign is a wire fraud advisory. The buyers are the ones who are more in jeopardy of this problem because they're wiring earnest money in some cases, and they're also in many cases wiring in their final funds at the end, both of which are susceptible to be intercepted and stolen essentially by internet pirates of wire fraud. I don't know, but It's a big deal. It's a problem. It is an issue for sure. So we're gonna say, look, the next thing that's gonna happen is we're gonna go and open up escrow, and I'm gonna order inspections for you next. Inspection would be a home inspection, and in most cases, we're gonna get a termite inspection as well. Okay, that's gonna be paid by the buyer at the time of the inspection. So they're gonna get an email from the inspection company that's gonna say, here's something you've gotta sign or release in some cases, or an authorization in some cases. And then they can pay with a credit card over the phone, or in some cases they can bring a check or a credit card to the actual inspection. Most home inspectors are going to do a home inspection. They're usually affiliated in some way with a termite company or a pest control company that will then be able to also do a termite inspection, in many cases the same day. The termite inspection will take 15-20 minutes. The home inspection can take anywhere from a couple hours up to 4.5 hours for bigger, larger homes.
So we're actually ordering the inspection. We're not giving them 3 companies to do their due diligence.
Well, if you do, that would have been in the buyer consultation. So what I would typically say is that in the consultation, we'll talk about, here are some options, along with home warranty as well, which we'll get into a little later.
Okay.
So that would be the time at the consultation that you would have their options for the home inspection companies and for the home warranty, so they have a chance to review it. Then you may ask them, hey, who would you like to use for your inspection? And they'll say, I don't know, I didn't look at any of it. Okay, well, I've got a great company we use a lot. If you would like, I'm happy to order it. If you want to take a few minutes this morning and review those, let me know which one you want, and then we'll order it that time. We need to do it today. We're ordering inspections immediately. In most cases, how many days do you have for inspections? Most cases, unless we change it in the contract. So what it means is, what happens if your inspector can't get there till day 8, and then you find out the AC is about to go out and the roof has got some challenges, and now you've got to have specialists come out and take a look at that kind of stuff. You don't have enough time. So we immediately order inspections the first day that we have the file, so that we have enough time, or a cushion of time, to make sure that if we need specialists to come in, we allow for that. So,
And you do that on the buy side. You don't ask the seller to do that.
yeah, right. Have you ever, that's ever happened to you? Where they're like, oh, can you get an inspection for us?
Yes, have the seller, have a licensed roofer inspect the roof, or have an AC company inspect it. That's not the seller's responsibility. It's the buyer's responsibility to do inspections.
Now, if we're on the listing side, and now you've gone ahead and sent the contract back to the buyer's, then what's your next step on the listing side?
Well, and one thing I meant to mention too, I kind of touched on this, the net proceeds sheet when we get an offer is the most important thing. We use, like Title Alliance has one, most title companies have them. There is one in MLS you can use as well. And we found over the years, by doing that, it helps really draw the focus to the net of the offer, not what they're giving or what they're paying, or I don't want to pay a home warranty, or I don't want to pay buyer's closing costs, or whatever that is. It's always just, okay, here's that number. If you're not happy with that number, where does that number need to be? And then let us try to figure out how to get there, whether it's a combination of reducing concessions, raising sales price, whether it's including the home warranty and HOA transfer fee in the concessions, whatever it may be. That net proceeds sheet is the first thing. Like when I scan it in, that's the first sheet they see before they see the offer, so they don't get too hung up on those other things, because it happens a lot where I'm not paying the buyer's closing costs, and it's like, okay, and you have to have that conversation. It's like, okay, that number at the bottom, where does that need to be? Let me figure out how to get there.
Yeah, most sellers, are they worried about how much they put in their pocket, or worried about how much it costs them to sell the house? It's their net. Most sellers want to know how much they're going to put in their pocket at the end, right? That matters. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because it probably, I agree, one of the most important things we do for every seller on the offers. Now, and what that means is, do we need to know how much the disclosure fee is going to be if they have one for the HOA? Do we need to know who's paying? Are they splitting transfer fees? Is there capital improvement fees, right? We need to know these things up front, which is why we will call the HOA every time and find out, what are your seller fees, what are the buyer fees, we need to fill out the HOA addendum and put it into MLS. That's the listing agent's job. It's not the buyer's job. The listing agent should have that in the doc section in MLS, because the listing agent's the one who calls and gets the actual numbers from the HOA. Then whenever you go in as a buyer, you'll pull out all the documents in the docs tab in MLS, to make sure that that's included for signatures with your buyer.
The other thing to keep in mind on that too, and is we've gone through it, from a buyer's perspective, writing a contract, there's those lines on page 3, you know, so you'll see a lot, like any undisclosed HOA transfers, costs or fees to transfer whatever to be paid by the seller, or to be paid by the, I mean, make sure that's covered, because we'll get that a lot from title, be like, hey, there's this working capital fee that when we call the girl that answered the phone to HOA didn't disclose to us or whatever, and then when title gets it, and now all of a sudden there's a $200 fee and it's not on the HOA addendum, who's paying it, and now what? And now, so you that. So a lot of times you'll see on like page 3 of the HOA, there's those extra lines, you just write any undisclosed HOA fees to be paid by the seller.
Yeah, that's an important part of it, you know, obviously as well. So, all right, so then the next thing that happens is we get the inspections are ordered now. The deposit is either brought in with a check. Now, most title companies can send a courier. So let's say that somebody's at home with a sick child and they're not going to be able to get out of the house to go deliver the check. Maybe they're working, they can't get away, not a big deal. Most title companies, some will charge, some will not. They can send a courier, it's like $30, worst case, where the title company can send somebody to pick up that check from the buyer's place of business or their home or wherever their check is. So it's not a big deal if the buyer can't drop off the check the next day because they're tied up or they already have plans. The next alternative would be to have a courier go pick that up from the buyer directly. If they're out of state, out of area, out of country, which we've done all of those, then typically a wire transfer is the best way. And again, that will come in an encrypted email from escrow to the buyer, and then it will give them specific instructions that they'll use for each subsequent wire. It's the same information for their initial deposit wire as it is for the final funds wire when you get down a couple days before closing. Rick, just an add?
Well, I have a question. So, similar to the inspector on the title company, do you have a script for that? Do you ever give them an option as to who to use? Do you just say, this is who I use? Do you skip that? And I bring it up because I literally had a buyer just recently. We're halfway through the process and she wants to change title companies. And I said, well, you picked the title company. Well, she didn't pick the title company. I picked the title company. So,
yeah.
So do you try to head that off up front, or ever have that conversation about the title company?
I don't. I'm kind of ashamed to say it. If it's in a competitive situation on the buy side, and I know that we're going to negotiate, meaning that we may be asking for some closing costs, I'll negotiate and give in to their title company in some cases. They say, hey, escrow's already open, or we're using this, and I'm asking for something different, that I might give a little bit to their title company in order to get some closing costs or get a warranty or something like that. To answer your question though, Rick, I don't. I'm like, look, I've asked people before, do you have a preference in title company? They may say, I mean, if it came from a referral from the title company, it's a no-brainer. It's going to go to that title company, which has happened to me as well. But I know. What do you guys on the buy side? What do you do, Twyla?
I typically ask, I'll say, do you have a preferred title company? And they're like, no. So I always say, well, you generally use Title Alliance, they're right next door to me, and then so I kind of have opened the door to say, do you have a preferred one? I did have one a couple months ago who did.
Yeah, that might be a good way to do it. I really haven't thought about it, to be honest with you. I just like do it. I'm just like, here's who we've had success with over the years, and they're good because they communicate very well. They get over every hurdle, and they've got locations all around, so it's easy. Or they'll send a mobile notary to you, so it's a simple process all the way around. That's a good point, though, Rick. Maybe we ask that. Hey, do you have a preferred title company? I like that, Twyla. And I'm gonna guess most people are gonna say no.
I've only had one person who did, so.
Yeah. Okay.
What about the other agent that says you can't tell me which title company to use?
Well, it's the buyer's choice.
No, okay. That's 50% correct.
Yeah, everything's negotiable.
Well, it's negotiable part of the contract like anything else, but you could technically close the same transaction at two different title companies.
If you have one for title, one for escrow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can't tell the seller who to use either.
Mm-hmm.
So you could technically close the same transaction at two different title companies. And I will tell you, there's not a title company or anybody that's ever been through it that would ever recommend it.
Oh, yeah.
But you could technically do that.
It's
Well, I
possible.
think that would be different if it were truly the buyer or the seller.
Correct.
But if it's just agents.
99.9% of the time, it's an agent. When an
Exactly.
agent says, "So my buyer really wants to use this title company," I always, like I tell my class, how many of you guys before you got in real estate knew what a title company was? So when the guy says, "Oh, the buyer really wants to use this title company," it has nothing to do with the buyer. So it really has to come down to do with that. But you can't tell the buyer where to buy title insurance, just like you can't tell the seller where to pay for their title insurance.
Mhm.
But they can, so technically you could do it at two different title companies. I would never ever recommend it, and most title companies will balk at it, but it technically could. So when somebody says to you it's a buyer's choice or it's a RESPA law and you can't technically, yes, that's partially correct, but you can also not tell the seller where they have to do it either.
Mhm.
So it is like any other term of the contract, it is negotiable.
Is it matter on a government buyer? I don't know the rule on it. If it's a FHA or VA buyer, or they're using VA or FHA financing, is that the buyer's choice? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think it matters. I think either matter way, it's each party can pick their own company for title insurance.
Yeah. Okay.
Which the irony, excuse me, the irony behind all of that is how many companies actually provide title insurance. I mean, most of them use First American.
There's only like 3 or 4.
I mean, realistically, they're almost
That
all getting the
are
title
underwrite.
insurance from the underwriter from the same company.
Yep, that's true. And look, if you're a cash buyer, do you need title insurance? No. Look, don't get me started on title insurance. You got the seller is required to pay title insurance because they're the ones who have got to sell a title that is clean of any encumbrances, mechanics, liens, right? The buyer's got to take over a clean ownership of the title, which means, but then the lender, if you're getting a loan on the buy side, requires you to also have a title policy, which is really double dipping because you just paid for a clear title on the seller side. So if you're a cash buyer, you save anywhere from $600 to $2,000, depending on the size of the house, in title policy, right? So as a cash buyer, you only need escrow services. As a cash buyer, you really don't even need title services because the seller's paying it for you, essentially. So that's something that's just an added expense of somebody who has to get a loan because their lender requires it. That's really the only difference in it.
And I always say title insurance could arguably be the biggest racket out there, right? I mean, it's so expensive and all that stuff, but what happens if they ever had to pay out on it? I mean, especially here in Arizona, I mean, been around for hundreds of years. I mean, somebody owned 20 acres and sold out part of them, didn't get recorded correctly, and now you go build a community, you build your custom home on it, and some great-great-great-grandson somehow comes and finds out that they owned that land.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine the claim that would have to be paid out on it.
Yeah, I remember seeing, I've seen gone on properties before. You were gone on these properties where that maybe SRP has a big, electrical box, right? Well, they've got to have a way to get there, right? So there are a lot of times where you're going to have easements on the title, which is going to allow for a public works company like SRP or APS to enter into your property to access cell phone towers. People do that a lot, right? They'll lease out places on their land to put a cell phone tower. Well, you got to also allow maintenance crews to get in and out as well, which affects the title, right? There's usually, in a lot of cases, there may be a strip of a property on the land that is egress for a public works company, for example. So those are things we have to look at, and the reason why title insurance comes into play. Now, we've ordered the inspection. Another thing we need to know is a CBS code, right? If you're a buyer's agent and you're ordering inspections, one of the things the inspector is going to want to know is what's the CBS code. CBS code is a special code that is attached to each individual lock box, the blue super lock boxes, that an outside vendor or partner can use that code to get into the lockbox. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
CBS code. So when you order the inspection, most times the inspector is going to want to know what's the CBS code. So that's something that I'll get from the listing agent typically in the beginning. Hey, thank you so much for sending back the contract. What's the CBS code? I'm going to order inspections immediately. So then I would provide, when I either call or use the online system for the inspection company, one of the questions they'll tend to ask is, what's the CBS code? I've already got that because I've asked for it from the listing agent. A lot of really good listing agents will just include that when they send you the contract signed back by the seller as well. All right, so think about that as part of that process. Now, we need to email all the documents. Who all is going to get a copy of the documents in the transaction if you're the buyer's agent? Yep. Buyer, right? Everybody, if there's multiple buyers or husband and wife or mother, daughter, whatever, everybody who's on the contract is going to get a copy of it. If they've got a loan, the lender absolutely needs an ASAP. And the title company is going to need a full email of all the documents as well. Who else? If you've got anybody, any other, parents that are helping out the kids, maybe they want to get a copy of it, right? As long as you have permission, you can send that out to all the parties involved. It's always going to include the buyer, title, and lender if applicable at that time.
Probably broker also.
Say again?
Broker.
Well, yeah, the broker, right? If you don't have, if you don't have if you don't have a transaction manager, you're going to upload that into either SkySlip or we use .loop here. So what you're going to do in that case is you submit it to the broker by uploading it all into .loop, which on our team we don't do as agents. Most agents do that. So you're right. That's the next thing you do is get into .loop, create a file for it. Now, if you've got them in a CRM, you've got the client, right, who's been a lead, and now they're an active client. So you're probably going to choose to also update their status in whatever CRM you're using. If it's eEdge or Boomtown or Follow Up Boss or whatever you've got, you're going to make those adjustments, make your notes, and then you're going to have follow-up calls set probably for 2 to 3 days from that date as well. Okay, so you get to, from a seller standpoint, now what happens?
Well, it's the same conversation. Here's what's next. The buyer's going to order the home inspection. They're going to schedule it through us, and then we'll clear it with you.
Can the seller be there for the inspection?
We prefer them not to be. We always tell them we prefer you not to be for sure. If you are, we'd really prefer you not to be there at the end if the buyer's coming with the agent. Because a lot of times the buyer will come at the end with the agent. So we try to have them not there if possible. And that was kind of busy. It's going to be kind of uncomfortable. Guys going to be running through, flipping switches and running dishwasher cycles and going through opening drawers and things like that. And it can be, it's a little uncomfortable. So it's easier to just stay out of his way and not be there.
Yeah. So we don't want the buyer to be there for the entire inspection either. Now, some buyers are going to be over anxious. They're like, oh, I want to be there and see everything. The reason we don't like that is because they get in the inspector's way and they ask a ton of questions, and an inspection, it should take 2.5 or 3 hours. Now it turns into 4 hours. Most inspection companies will start at 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. Those are the 2 start times in many cases, give or take an hour, but they'll do a morning and afternoon inspection. So what happens is a house that's, say, 2,500 feet, that inspection should take 2.5 to 3 hours. If it's a larger house, obviously more time. If it's a, my $15,000 trailer, they'll be out of there in an hour probably, right? Maybe not, because there can be problems. We'll see. Fingers crossed. So what we want to do is we want to coach the buyer on what they would like to do. So the first thing I would ask them is, before I order the inspection, if you're able to go, would you be more likely to meet the inspector late morning or late afternoon? If they say, hey, I can get off at 2 o'clock, then I would typically work to get them afternoon schedule. If they say I can take the morning off, then I would say let's get them a morning inspection. The reason being is we would like the buyer to be there at the end for what we call the wrap-up session of the inspection. So in most cases, if the inspector is going to start, let's say at 9 a.m., we might have the buyer there between 11 and 11:30. That should be time to have most of the inspection done, and then the inspector will always go over the most impressing things that were found in that inspection with the buyer. The termite company will be there, the pest control company will be there quickly. They're again in and out maybe 15-20 minutes. And they'll usually leave a report and or email a report later in the day. So do we want to go to the inspection as a buyer's agent?
Yes.
Every time if possible, every time. And so what we'll do is I'll usually show about 10-15 minutes before I've asked the buyers to be there. And that conversation will be to go to the inspector. Hey, I'm here and I want to get in your way. How far are you from wrapping up? He or she may say, I'm 15 minutes away. I'm just going to go in the attic. Cool, I'm just gonna let them be. And then I may ask before the client gets there, what do you think about this house? And they'll say, well, overall pretty good. There are some areas that we need to look at, and we'll go over that with the buyer. Awesome. They may say, hey, there's some pretty major stuff here that you really want to pay attention to. then I'm gonna go into that with a mindset when the buyer gets there that this may or may not be something we can close. So let's see. Buyer gets there, I'll just shut up. Like, let the inspector do his or her job. They'll take the buyer through the house. They'll say, here are the main things that we found. There's water stain up here, which could be some roof issues. The AC appears to be original. The house is built in 1996. They could say, it looks like they've had some cracked tiles on there, but nothing that appears to be leaking. There's some fascia that needs to probably be scraped, or there's some potential water damage. They'll tell us all these things. And then either that day or the following day, we'll get a full report with photographs, explanations, and most of the time, the inspection reports are set up, some companies do it this way, where it says here, everything in red needs attention immediately. Everything beyond that in blue, you keep your eye on. Everything in black, good to go. You're probably good for a while. And then we're gonna get a termite report, right? Inspection report. On that, has anybody seen this? Have you seen the termite report? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So they're going to tell you a few things. You know, one is there evidence of termites? That's the first thing we're looking for. So are there, yes, there is. No, there's not. If so, what's the type? We see a lot of subterranean termites in Arizona. It's not a big deal. It happens a lot. Most houses are going to get termites at some point. It's easily treatable. It's not like California where you got to put a tent over the house. It's pretty easy to manage termites in Arizona. So yes, termites or no termites. And then is there any water damage? I look at those, the check boxes right on page 2, where is there any evidence of moisture damage or any water damage that was observed? They'll put that in any accessible areas, or like the exclusions are places that the inspector's not able to access. Maybe because furniture's there, there's stuff in the way, or it's in the garage and there's shelving or whatever. And then there's usually a diagram, well, there always is a diagram, on the last page where if there are termites, it'll tell you exactly where they are. So they'll have all these little letters that will tell you what the key is at the bottom, and they'll just map it out for you on the house where they found the termites or the water damage or the water stains. They'll also talk in that report about you see this a lot where the dirt slopes to the house. So when it rains, the water comes up to the stem wall. It can cause issues on the foundation potentially. And you always want to have the slope away from the house. So when it rains, water runs over the house. You see that a lot on these termite reports. All right. Do we want to have the other thing I forgot to mention was that a lot of times we're going to ask the buyer's lender to hold on the appraisal until we're through with the inspections. Why would we do that?
Save the money.
What happens if we can't get to the inspection or we can't agree on repairs? I don't want to spend the buyer's money before we know that we're through the inspection period. And you have a lot longer to get the appraisal done than you do the inspection. So, Rick?
I was just going to say, that's a great conversation to have with the buyers too, because it shows them that you're looking out for them. Hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you we're going to hold off until we get past the inspection. I don't want you guys paying for it if we can't get past the inspection. Oh, well,
Yeah, that's smart. Andy?
What is a typical timeline then we should be when we see things are going good, then allowing the appraisal? Because they get anxious about when I say, hold the appraisal, are you sure is it staying? It's like every day phone call.
Is it your buyer or your lender?
Lender.
Well, to me, it depends on how long of an escrow it is. You know, we're in a tight situation in November, December because of the holidays. So what might be a 30-day escrow on paper is really about a 26-day escrow because you're going to have days of closing. Escrow's not going to be there every day. So to answer the question, I will typically wait until we have a signed Benzer by both parties and I know we're going, and then we'll release or we'll ask for the appraisal to be ordered then. Now, if we get the inspection and we've only got a week and a half or 2 weeks to closing because it's a tight close, then if I look like there are no deal breakers that I can imagine on the inspection, then I may choose to order the appraisal once we get the inspection back if there are nothing major on the inspection before we come to terms on the Benzer. Does that make sense? So the answer is it depends. If we have plenty of time, there's no rush to order the appraisal. Now, what happens if you get a house that we think is priced on the high side and we don't know if it's going to appraise? We could flip it. We could ask for a longer escrow or longer inspection period. Maybe ask for a 15 or a 20-day inspection period, and you don't have the inspection paid for it until the appraisal's done. So you do the appraisal first. If we think we're challenged on value, that has happened before. And then we just give ourselves enough time in the contract. Instead of going with a default of 10 days, we write in 15 days or 20 days in order to give us time to determine value before we spend the money on the inspections. That's happened sometimes before.
You ever get any push? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You ever get any pushback on that?
From
the other agent as to why? Would you explain that to the listing agent?
Yeah, well, has that ever come up for you as a listing agent?
Yeah, I'm still back and forth on it. One concern I have with it is that the appraiser gets a copy of the contract, and is it drawing attention to the appraiser that maybe there's a concern about the value, because we're doing that first. And so I've gone back and forth on it. But if we're going to do it, then we just say, look, obviously we all agree, we're concerned that the appraiser, especially if it's a situation where they've raised the price to cover concessions or things along those lines, we say, look, we always just do appraisal to be ordered within 2 business days of contract acceptance, proof delivered to listing agent, inspection period to start upon mutual acceptance of the appraisal contingency. And basically, just trying to say, of the 2 items, we believe the appraisal to be the bigger hurdle in this transaction, so we want to get that done and out of the way first. Because to be honest with you, I mean, in most houses that have been built in the last 20 years, inspection stuff, there's really, I can't tell you the last time I've had a deal fall apart completely because of the inspection. I mean, usually you can get through most of the items that are there. If the house is built in the 50s and had add-ons and all those other things, that might be a bigger concern. You just have to make a decision on what are we more concerned with. Of the 2 contingencies, which one is more of a concern? Is it we're more concerned that we may not appraise, or is it more concerned in inspection? And if it's been built in the last 20 years, typically it'd be the appraisal if we're pushing the price.
And in that case, if I do that, I always call the listing agent and tell them why I'm setting that. And obviously Craig's gonna know why, but maybe another listing agent hasn't seen it as often. So
Usually I'm the one, from us, it's the listing agent that's suggesting it. Usually I'm the one first going, hey, we wanna do it this way, and here's why. Most of the time I haven't had anybody push back as a reason.
So is in your conversation with your seller about the extended inspection period, like, hey, it's gonna be about the same length of an inspection period, we're just jumping this hurdle first?
Just getting it, because usually they're concerned too, we're just getting the appraisal done first.
Okay. Yeah, it's still gonna be about the same as if it were first, it's gonna run about 10 days.
And honestly, in a lot of cases, you can move things a lot quicker doing it that way, because there is no timeline in the contract for the appraisal. So by saying it has to be ordered within 2 business days and proof delivered to the listing and getting the appraisal done within the first, at that point, 8 to 10 days, now you have a timeline for the inspection. If we do the inspection, they take 8 days to do it, they submit the request on day 10, we have 5 days to respond, we submit our response on day 4, they have 5 days to respond to that, they respond on day 4, now we're 3+ weeks into it, then they order the appraisal. It could be another week or so before the appraisal's done, and now we're pushing it. So if we do the appraisal first, now we have a set timeline more so on the inspection thing.
Yeah, so it's interesting that I have Steve had a question as well.
Yeah, how do you as a buyer's agent handle the alarmist type inspector?
That's a good question, and it has happened for sure. I have a conversation before we go to the inspection. So we've ordered it now. We figured out when the buyer's available to go meet, and I usually will preface the meeting by talking about what the inspection is. An inspection is a way for us to determine what's going on with the house. Now, as a buyer, what we're going to do is we're going to look for the things that matter the most, the mechanical and safety issues of the house.
Structural, mechanical, safety.
Yeah, electrical, plumbing, roof, AC, maybe in some cases the built-in appliances. It's not a place where you're going to ask for the walls to be painted. It's not a place that you're going to ask for, cosmetic upgrades, right? That's going to be factored into the price. Where this is going to be a time that we're going to really focus on the most expensive parts of the house and the mechanical, functional, structural, any challenges might be. And then I also talk about strategy. Look, in the psychology of a seller, when you get over 7 or 8 items, especially if you've got an addendum to the Benzer, like that's the worst thing you want to see as a seller. As though there's another page. Awesome.
I would say if you can't fit it on page 1, don't write it.
Yeah, that's a good advice. So the conversation with the buyer is, look, we want to be reasonable, and we also, a negotiation is win-win.
Right.
That means that the seller feels like they're delivering the house in a way that they would want it to be delivered to them, and the buyer feels that they got the things handled that really needs to be done. Now, Andy got a brand new AC unit for her clients right in one house. It happens. We've gotten new roofs for our buyers. That has happened before. Yet the reality is we talk about the psychology of asking for repairs between a buyer and a seller. In my experience, somewhere between about 5 and 8 items is about the sweet spot for a seller to say, hey, I'll do all of that, or I'll at least do these 5 or 6 things. To get most or all of the requests handled, that's usually the number that we look at.
The expectation, and Rick talked about this last class when I talked, because I asked him, the expectation we set from the beginning on both sides. We do it as a seller, listing agent from the seller and from the buyer. Understand, home inspectors are licensed. Okay, they're going in with the idea of covering themselves, because they tell you the AC is fine and it could be perfectly fine, and 6 weeks later it goes out, which could happen. It could be a 6-year-old AC, it could be a 26-year-old AC. First person that you're going to want to call is the home inspector going, you didn't tell me. So they're going in with the idea is have this checked, watch out for this. Worst case scenario in every single thing. And so you have to prepare your buyer for that this is going to sound a lot worse than it is. Here's what we're focused on. And the biggest thing is keep in mind you're buying a resale home. Okay? You're not buying a new, like you go buy a resale car, you're not expecting it to be exactly the same as a brand new car. You're buying a resale home, and so and some inspectors don't focus as much on code today. When a house was built, the code was this, but now the code is this, and they want it brought up to code, and they'll mention that in the report. That's not the seller's responsibility. My big thing is the AC is 20 years old. If it's working, but they say it's near end of life expectancy. For me as a seller, as a listing agent, I'm going, yes, and you knew that when you wrote the offer. It was in the disclosure statement. It was that. That's not a legitimate reason now to ask for a new AC system, because if it had a new AC system, there'd be a different price point that the house would probably be listed at or whatever. So we bought it based off knowing that the thing was 20 years old. If it's not working, needs repairs, yes, we'll fix it. But to just ask for that, I see it with water heaters. Oh, water heaters is. My own personal water heater lasted 19 years. I mean, it just did. So when they say 8 to 12 years or whatever, I mean, it's not. The idea is not to ask for it just simply based on age, because the way the contract's written, especially now, with it conveys in the same condition as when you looked at it. That's why it's important when you're looking at the house and writing an offer to make sure that all those things you see. A cracked floor tile to me is not an inspection request item. It was there. It's a resale home. Those are common things that happen.
Yeah, and the other line I like to use a lot is, well, thank goodness we were able to negotiate a home warranty for you for the first year. The seller's going to cover that cost, and then if you choose to, you can then renew that at the end of your first year. I'll be calling you at month 11 to remind you that especially if you've used the warranty, you probably want to renew it. Regardless, I haven't used my warranty ever, and I just renew it every year. Because one day the AC is going to go out, or one day my water heater is going to pop, whatever. I know it's going to happen. So that may be something too to bring in. Is luckily we were able to negotiate. That's the thing about verbiage, right? You're in this together with your client. So one of the mistakes I hear agents make is they have a lot of you, when it really should be we. Right. In other words, we negotiated the price. We decided the price to list your house. Even though you'll probably say the seller's going to decide the price, yet we guide them to a good decision. Part of our job of being a guide as a real estate professional is to give our clients enough information to make an educated, smart decision. And then we decided this, or we negotiated the terms, or luckily we were able to get you a home warranty through the contract. So thankfully, even though you've got some concerns about the age of the AC, it's covered, right? And in most cases, they'll fix it. If they can't fix it or the parts aren't there, then there's a chance they can. I've had 3 clients who had brand new ACs replaced by the warranty company within a year of buying a house.
I have so probably silly question, but do you put that in your CRM to remind you to call them?
Yes.
Months later?
Uh-huh. Yep. And we're going to talk about that at the end of the class today is our follow-up care program and how often you contact people. And yes, the answer is that
It's automated, like to where it sends to your phone or something like that?
well, there probably is that. The way I do it personally is I set a to-do of like a follow-up. So there's annual to-dos, which could be like what I call a home anniversary call. So depending on the CRM that you're using, if you've got a spreadsheet or whatever you're using, then you may put a calendar reminder to call back the Smiths in October because they just closed in November. And can you believe it's almost been a year? Have you used your warranty? If regardless, this would be the time to renew it. That would be the script you would use. And then I use it as a to-do reminder where like every day I have a list of calls to make that pop up my screen. And that's what I do. I'll call through that list of people. One of those calls or multiple of those calls could be an anniversary call is what it is, basically a home anniversary.
So how often do you call closed?
Quarterly at minimum. They're going to get a call every quarter at
On a
minimum.
personal phone call, it's not like an automated.
Personal phone call. Yep. Yeah, and it's usually more than that. We'll talk more about that to the end. And yes, anybody. So the time frames. We'll talk about it real quick. The time frames are if it's somebody who's closed a transaction with me or referred or any kind of business together, they're going to be on the docket every quarter. So I'm going to put them in right now. People I'm talking to today are going to be. I'm going to make my notes and then I'm going to put a follow up for probably February, March.
Okay.
And it means I'm probably going to be promoting some kind of client event we're doing. Because there's going to be some kind of happy hour. We just did our movie event. So last week I was calling everybody, inviting them to the movie. And then in the spring it could be, hey, just a reminder that it's time to spring clean. We work with a nonprofit. If there's anything you want to get rid of, I'll come pick it up and we'll go deliver it. It could be whatever, a feel-good type environment. We're going to have a picnic at the park this weekend. Want to invite you and the family over to come. We're going to have a face painter and a photographer that's going to take your pictures. Whatever, right? You're going to call them quarterly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so let's talk about, you have any? Okay, so let's talk about, we get the inspections back now, and now we're going to have a conversation with the buyer about how to fill out the buyer's inspection notice and the seller's response. How many of us in the room have done a BINSR, buyer inspection notice, seller response? Almost everyone, most of us? Okay. So it's just simply in Arizona, it's our form where the buyer is able to either accept the property as it is either able to just say, I don't want it anymore, or I will take it if you'll agree to the following repairs and or credit. So that's when, as a buyer's agent, we're completing our top pressing items. So the conversation might be something like this. Okay, have you had a chance to look over the inspection report? So, yep, we did. Okay, tell me what your thoughts are. Okay, I'll usually say, I'd like for you to give me your points that you think are important. I'm going to give my points that I think are important. We're going to combine those, and we're going to check, and we're going to decide together which ones we're going to ask for. They want to be heard. They want to make sure that we're not negating the importance of what they think needs to be done. And every client needs to be part of the process, always.
Do you send a copy of the report to the listing agent prior to the BINSR?
If there's a lot of problems, I will, just to give a precursor to, hey, we got some big challenges we're going to have to get through, and I want to give you a head start of reviewing the report now. Here's a copy of the inspection and the termite report.
I thought you had to immediately send it upon your receipt.
I don't know that that's a rule. It's not a bad idea. I'm not sure if that's a requirement. I don't know the answer to that, though, to be honest with you. I normally will send it with the BINSR. So when I send the buyer's inspection notice, I'll attach both inspections. If the termite was clean, I won't worry about the termite. Typically, I'll just send the home inspection. If there are termites or there's wood or water damage or whatever, then 100% I'll send all the inspections.
Quiff requires the termite inspection every time.
Oh, no, okay.
I just know because I see Christine emailing all the time, can you please send me a copy of the termite inspection?
Okay, all right.
And they'll say, well, it was clean, and they'll say, well, our broker still requires it.
On the list, on both sides,
I'm guessing, yeah.
Okay, all right. I know as a buyer side we have to upload in the dot loop, so we have to give that to the broker regardless. I don't know if the requirement is the listing. Regardless, not a bad idea to do that. So if I'm reading over the inspection, there's a lot of major stuff there, and I know that we're gonna have a big negotiation, I'll immediately send it to the listing agent and just
Words are important too. Major is probably a word I would try to avoid.
yeah.
Words are important. Catastrophic, major, things like that.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Deal breakers.
Right. like are they found termites? There's a termite infestation. Like, just don't ever use the word infestation.
that's smart.
And let's,
So let's talk. So I want to get back to you as far as when we submit the Binzer and what that process on the seller side. What I want to do though is let's talk about verbiage, because I agree 100%. It matters. I wouldn't say that to a client.
No, I know. I know you.
Oh my God, the house is falling down. Don't buy it.
I know you want to make sure they know that.
Yeah.
Try to avoid the word major or.
Mr. Collins.
I was just another suggestion. I'll bring a copy of the Binzer to the inspection with me to show it to this buyer. This is a document I'm going to send you. Here are our options. You can take this house as is. So then they go, oh wow, there are people who actually take their houses as is.
Right.
We don't have to ask for every single thing. Here are your options. You can accept the house as is. We can ask the seller to take care of the significant issues, or you can cancel the deal, and then I'll say, in 10 years, I've only had that happen twice. We're going to get through it, but at least they're seeing the document, they're seeing their options, and they're recognizing that it isn't an opportunity to take the entire report and hand it to the seller, and that there is an opportunity to actually accept the house as is, which I wouldn't ever tell somebody to do, but at least they see, oh wow, here's the official form, and there's people who actually take the house in its condition.
We just did that for a short sale. We knew it was as is, and we just took it as we just accepted it. If we know going in it's as is, that would be a couple rare times that you would do that, of just taking it in its current condition. That's a good point.
Remind them to read 191 through 199 of the contract prior to the inspection.
Yeah, is our contract an as-is contract? It is now. That's a new change this past year, or this year, where, now it used to be there were these warranted items, which was a nightmare for most people because it was a little bit vague as to what's warranted, what's not.
Completely.
So now what they did was, what the Arizona Association of Realtors did was they decided that we were going to have a contract now that's just an as-is contract. You can still ask for repairs. The seller certainly has no obligation. The buyer is still able to cancel off that buyer's decision. So not a lot has changed other than the seller can be like, hey man, I'm not fixing anything. And the buyer can still decide if they want to go or not. So that's kind of the same as it was anyway. So we're going over the inspection. Let's talk about, Twyla, would you share with us maybe an idea of a conversation you've had with a buyer when you're going over the inspection? How do you approach it?
My last one, I got a text that said we want everything in the report fixed.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was the only time I've ever had that, and it was a condo that really was super clean. But, so I called her and I went through and I said, okay, there's a light bulb out. Oh, no, that's okay. So I kind of do the same thing typically, though I do what you do. I've already feel like I've kind of prepped them as we're looking at houses. I'm reminding them, our contract does say it's as is. I said, so we're gonna look at the big items and keep in mind if it needs, if the roof is torn up or the AC is bad, if they don't fix it for us, they're gonna have to fix it at some point. So we can usually get through those things. So I kind of feel like I've already kind of set the stage that when they get the inspection report, most people aren't expecting to have everything fixed. So I do, I always say, look it over, let's think about electrical, safety, roof, what's the other one?
Plumbing,
look at the
AC.
big ticket items,
Yep.
and then you kind of make a list, I'll make a list, and then we'll talk tomorrow.
Yeah, I like that approach. There's a lot of right ways to do it. This is just one way. I like that collaboration effort because sometimes what I find is that their list is shorter than mine. And then I might say, well, one thing you might, if you've only got 3 things, I get it. And in my experience, you might consider asking for this. Now, they may not say yes to everything. Regardless of what they say, if they agree to everything, we'll keep going. If they agree to some of it or none of it, then it still comes back to the buyer as to whether you want to proceed. So the buyer has first right of refusal. They're in control in this process because they can back out for a few different reasons, or they can stay in for a few different reasons. So I get that question from buyers sometimes. Well, if I ask for this stuff and they say no, does that mean I'm canceling? No, it means that you have the ability then to decide if you would like to proceed. Now, do we always get the repairs done, or are there times that we get the seller to say, I don't want to fix it, and here's money? That happens, right? In fact, sometimes I like that for my buyers, is that we can choose who does the work. If the seller says, hey, we're going to do the work, we can ask for a licensed contractor. Sometimes we do that. If it's something major, we want an HVAC contractor to, tune up the HVAC system. We want a licensed termite company to treat for termites and give us a 1-year warranty, right? There are all these different things we can ask for. The reality is that if the seller does the work, we're not guaranteed it's going to be done in a great way. So sometimes a credit from the seller ends up being better for the buyer, because then we can choose who does the work to make sure it's quality. Which means if we want a credit, what do we need to know?
How much it's gonna cost?
How much it's going to cost, right?
How much credit can they get? Because you can only get.
Yeah, now you can only, credit for repairs can only be as credit toward closing costs. So no lender wants to see that you've got a credit for, mold. They want to see that you've got a credit toward the buyer's closing costs and prepaid items. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. We just went through this, I think with you, Andy, if I recall. So let's say that you ask for $2,000 in credit instead of repairs. So what you do is you would write in the Benzer, we want these items, boom, 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 boom. The way I typically do it, what up, brother? When you give me, yeah, we're doing a little night this morning.
I see that.
Close the deal, baby.
That's work. Oh, you're doing close the deal. I thought you were doing CMA because I saw him up there.
Well, yeah, he's a master at it. Yeah, he's good. He's at 99.3% list price to sales price year to date. Yeah. Does this guy know how to price property?
He knows how to close the deal.
He knows how to close the deal. Good to see you here. Okay, so here's something to pay attention to. If you haven't been in this situation before, you will be in this situation. We say we want a credit, and the seller comes back and says, okay, we're going to say no to the repairs, and we'll give you $2,000. Okay, cool. I need an addendum signed by the seller agreeing to the $2,000 toward the buyer's closing costs and prepaid items, and then we'll sign the addendum, and then we'll accept the 0 repairs. Why would you do that?
Protect your buyers.
Well, what happens if we agree to a Benzer that says no repairs, and we don't have an addendum signed by both parties saying that the seller's going to get the $2,000? We're out $2,000 potentially, right? That's one of the worst things we do for our buyers in that situation. So you're going to find it happen a lot of times where the seller's going to say, to follow the contract, no to the repairs. On the Benzer response, we absolutely need an addendum showing the credit. And great point. Let's say that we already got $5,000 from the seller up front for buyer's closing costs. We aren't able to exceed the actual amount of closing costs and prepaid items from the buyer from credit from a seller. If we don't use it, we lose it. So where would this come into play? If we had already negotiated $5,000 toward buyer's closing costs, and then we get another $3,000 in credit on repairs, that's $8,000. The house is only going to cost you about $6,000, $6,500 in closing costs. All of a sudden, you've got more credit that you can actually use. So pay attention to that as well.
Be careful of the wording on the addendum too, because I had one last year that they just sent it back and said, we'll give you $2,000 credit at closing or something to that effect. Well, my buyer was already getting the closing cost. So whoever I talked to was like, make sure we put in there an additional $2,000 for a total of $5,000.
That's a great point, Twyla. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, so total seller concessions to be $6,000 or whatever that number is toward buyer's closing costs and prepaid items. I was taught to use that because the closing costs are set fees, and then you have prepaid. That's going to be your first year's homeowner's insurance. It's going to be any reserves if you have a loan, like 3 months worth of reserves for insurance, maybe 6 months reserves in property taxes, and also any interest through the end of the month that you close. And those are considered prepaid items, which are recurring costs, versus closing costs, which is a one-time cost. Title, escrow, appraisal, lender fees. That's a one-time versus recurring, which is what's called a prepaid item. Yeah.
Greg,
All right.
Do you cap those kind of fees? Those concessions, do you cap them? Do you say, we're not gonna do anything more than $5,000?
Well, normally I try to get estimates right away.
Okay.
When I get a Binzer, I try to get estimates, if either, depending on what it is, and get an amount, so I know what we're talking about.
Okay.
But a lot of times I'll start, if I go to the seller and they say, hey, look, what if we just offer a credit instead? Would you be wool with $1,500? And they say, yeah, then I'll go back to the buyer's agent and say, look, I was able to talk the seller into doing $1,000 credit. Would they be okay with that?
Okay.
And try to use that just to try to negotiate a little bit, but a lot of times I try to get estimates. The idea is, what I found with Benzers is, from the seller's perspective, is, in fact, he just called, even though I was very clear this morning when I sent it that I will call you this afternoon. But I always try to either send them towards the end of the day, and then say, hey, I've got a couple of appointments tonight, let's talk tomorrow, give them time to cool down, look through it, all that type of thing. And here's the one thing that you'll learn, especially if you're doing both sides, meaning if you're representing the seller and then they're going to turn around and become a buyer. As the seller, when they get the Binzer, they're not fixing anything. Like they just, no way, cannot believe, this house, I've lived in this house for 15 years, this isn't a problem, this is absolutely ridiculous. You get through that, then you take them out, you find a house, write an offer, do an inspection, get the thing, and they're like, we want all of it fixed. And you're literally like, with the most straight face in the world, like you're just looking at them like, and then I've always said, and I always joke, I always said, the thing about real estate is, you'll take the most common sense, down to earth person you've known your whole life, somebody rational as can be, and you put a for sale sign in their yard or a purchase contract in front of them and the wheels come off. The emotion takes over, it changes everything in their regard. And so, I can't tell you over 15 and a half years how many times we've had that exact scenario where we're not fixing anything, and then they go buy a house and they want everything fixed. And they just cannot believe that the seller on that one wouldn't fix anything, even though and we've had it where we literally got away with not fixing anything, and then the buyer, they submitted this request, and the buyer only wants to fix a couple things, and they're freaking out. And you're like, I don't know, it's why we own restaurants and drink.
So now, as a buyer's agent, we've submitted to you, the listing agent, our buyer's inspection notice, copies of our inspections. I personally will typically, in the body of that email, I will write, the buyer's open to a seller credit if that's easier for the seller. I don't normally, in my experience, I don't typically write that in the Binzer. I've seen people do it. I don't choose to personally. I choose to ask for the repairs. And in the body of the email, I'll just say the buyer's open to a credit. I don't give a dollar amount. I don't tell them how much, because I probably don't know. It's going to buy me some time to get my estimates, right? Hopefully we have enough time to get estimates before the inspection period is over. Most of the times I know. So it buys me time without saying we need $3,000 to just say we are open to a seller credit if that's easier for the seller. That's another negotiating word that you can say that says, hey, we're going to give and take a little bit. And then that will buy a little bit of time. So now we've presented it over, we email that to you, and then, by the way, the only people that should ever see a buyer's inspection notice is the other agent and the parties involved. It never goes to the lender, doesn't go to escrow. Nobody sees the buyer's inspection notice except for the parties involved, buyer, seller, agent. That's it. Now we submit it to you, and then what happens on the listing side?
It depends. I think, and you and I talked about this, it depends on how many things are asked for. Sometimes we'll just reply, great, thanks, in order of priority, which things are the most important to the buyer to find out, because sometimes there's 15 things and you drill it down that way or whatever. And then it's kind of funny to see the responses from that, because sometimes they they're all important, but, and it's like they didn't really. So a lot of times what I'll do, like I said, is I'll send it over to the seller and then wait and have a conversation with them later. In the meantime, try to get estimates, because a lot of times it looks a lot worse on paper. If there's 12 things, but I give it to Mike Boyd, our handyman, and 8 of those things are $250. It's a lot easier to go back to the seller then and say, okay, I know it looks like all this, but we've got, here's this amount, you know, it's, these 8 items would be $250. And as opposed to just sending it over going, what do you think? And trying to, you know, figure it out, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do buyers tend to think things cost more than they do to repair?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So there's a whole other class that you talked about before of the sellers are probably better paint that bedroom because the buyer's going to think it's going to cost $500 to paint it and it's going to cost $60 to paint it. So these are things where there's a lot of times there's a disconnect in the value between a buyer and a seller in the actual cost of repairs. So if you're on the buy side, would it make sense that you may ask for more money than the actual repairs are going to take? And on the listing side, you may tend to offer about half as much as the repairs are going to take. There's a different sides, different perspectives. Somewhere in the middle is typically where we meet. What's the conversation? So you had the conversation when you asked the agent, hey, in order of importance, what are they? And then how do you present it to the seller?
Like I said, I send it to them and then wait a little while, either overnight or and then try to, in the meantime, work on getting inspections for them. Tell them I've got 5 days to make a response. So let's go through each item one by one. Let's understand it. What does that mean? What's involved? How common is that? Is this something that's going to continue to come up? And is it going to be something that if this deal falls through, we're still going to have to fix and or disclose going forward? You know, is it, you know, if it's replace the dirty air filters, then we just cross that one off and tell them, you know, we're not doing that. I mean, you just go through it and you try to kind of, as unemotional as possible, go through each item and say, here's things that are going to continue to come up, here's things that aren't, here's why they're being asked for, here's why they're not, you know, and just understand that here's what the inspection sounds like versus what it is, and try to hopefully get through it. And again, being able to provide estimates along the lines of those things. Like I'm going to have my handyman go out and look at those 4 things. I'm going to get an estimate from Prime Roofing on this. I'm going to get an estimate from that. Then we'll sit down and really look through it and decide at that point what we're going to do.
Yeah.
To try to kind of take the ease off of it. We don't have to make a decision right now. Let's not panic. Let's figure out what we're looking at first, then make the decision.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought up. You know, one of the things that really is effective is when we explain to the client what the time frames are, and it's real simple. Look, we're going to go ahead and submit this repair request, is what I typically call it. I don't call it a Benzer. I don't call it MLS. Like I'll say, you know, a buyer's inspection notice or the multiple listing service. So a lot of times we get, as a realtors, we get in the habit of shortening up things, acronyms all the time. So I'm saying Keller Williams. It's important that we say what we mean and what it is in a way that the buyer, the seller can understand. So we might say something like, well, we're going to go ahead and submit our repair request. Now they have 5 days to respond. That's 5 calendar days to respond. It starts at midnight tonight of your signature date. So that means that we'll need to hear back from them by, Friday. A lot of times it's sooner than that. That's how long they have. Now, once they respond, we'll have another 5 days to respond what we want to do from there. So the time frames of the contract are important also to spell out for the client, because they are going to be on edge a lot of times. They're going to be anxious to get things going and get to the next step, and it's a process. And
What happens if you get to day 4 and you haven't had a response?
Well, I'll reach out pretty regularly to the agent.
The question is, good to day 5, and now what? You got to make a decision, right? Because if I don't respond by day 5, it's assumed that we're not fixing anything, and the buyer's moving forward.
What if
Yep.
we get an email from the agent saying we're going to get back to you as soon as we can, but we're waiting on HOA to decide, and then you get the bids are late?
Then do an addendum to extend the response time.
Yeah. An addendum can pretty much cure anything in the contract if you want to make changes to it or adjustments. So we've done addendums or exactly that. Hey, inspection period to be through December 6th. Or seller response time to the counteroffer to be the new date and new time. So that's a good point, that you can use addendums if you need to make adjustments, assuming that you got your communication. Where did he ran you out, Twyla? Just like that?
Hey. Buyer's in town, so I'm off.
Go get it.
Important-
Thank you.
It's important to know the timelines and keep track of those, and don't just submit the Benzer and forget about it, because it's important to know that, hey, they got 5 days to respond, and hey, it's day 4, I haven't heard from them yet. follow up. Day 5 comes, now you gotta go to your clients and go, we gotta make a decision. I haven't heard from them, they're not returning my calls or emails. We have to make a decision now on day 5 on what, are we okay if they, because this, that, or do we wanna try to extend it, or do we wanna cancel because they haven't responded?
And technically, you would do a cure notice probably for that if it's day 5 as a buyer and they've not responded.
No, because it says it's basically assumed that they didn't respond, then.
You can't cure that. Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, based on what the wording is basically, no response is a response.
Yeah, meaning we won't do anything.
Right.
Yeah, we went through that as well recently.
Is the nature of the repair that you ask for, does that dictate whether you put in there, it's a licensed professional or a handyman, or what? How do you word that when you're asking for?
I've done both. There are times where if it's, a licensed roofer, licensed plumber, licensed electrician, if it's that kind of stuff, if it's things that aren't major, I mean, I know we've got 2 or 3 handymen that can do almost anything, and they'll do a workmanlike standards. So the answer is yes. A lot of times I will ask for a licensed plumber, electrician, HVAC tech, roofer, whatever. Although, if it's stuff that's minor, I may not specifically ask for a license, because I know in my case on listings, my handyman can probably do most of that stuff. It's going to cost a lot less money for my seller, and it's okay. So I've done it both ways. What do you prefer?
I would prefer, depending on what it is. If there's 5 or 6 cracked roof tiles and mud walls, I don't need a licensed roofer to do that. If it's HVAC stuff, obviously you want a licensed person. And there's dollar amounts in there, because I believe it's $1,000. If it's more than $1,000, it's technically supposed to be a licensed person that's supposed to have done the work and do all that. So
Over 1,000 total.
Total, right.
In the repairs, right? So if you're asking for more than $1,000, or we suspect it's going to be more than $1,000, then that would probably be more likely a licensed professional.
Do you request receipts?
Yeah. Yep. We do, and in fact, you want to touch on that, how you do it on the listing side for repairs that have been made?
Yeah, it depends. You mean, yes, if Prime Roofing goes out and does roof work, then they send me a receipt. If REM Windows does work that, if, AC guy does that, then they send receipts, absolutely. And then if it's stuff that my seller is going to take care of, and my handyman, I would just say, if you went to Home Depot and bought something for it, keep a copy of the receipt. If you will, take a picture of it for me, even that type of thing. And because then the buyer's still going to do a walkthrough, but yeah.
The end you will, if it's on the buyer side, then we'll typically ask for the receipts to be emailed over before we do the final walkthrough, normally, and then and then especially any warranties. Termite treatment's the most common one, where we say, hey, look, we want the home to be treated for termites, and we want a 1-year transferable warranty or a 2-year transferable warranty. And then in that case, we would have the clean termite report then after they did the treatment, along with a warranty. And that, of course, the buyer needs that, because what if something goes wrong that was fixed? They need to know who to go to come back and have it done. If they get termites again in 6 months and it's under warranty, that company's going to be the one to come back and treat it. And so we'll need to have contact information. I've had it happen before where a handyman would come in and do the work, and then I'll just get the name and phone number from the listing agent of the person who did the work, and then forward that to the buyer. Because sometimes buyers they'll move in, and I'll get a call 2 or 3 weeks later. Hey man, the guy came over to show us how to use the RO system, but I forgot this one, what this knob does. I need another walkthrough on it. Okay, cool. Here's the person that came, and here's their number. So it's kind of a combination of that. Okay, so we come to terms on the Benzer, and we've got a list of repairs that we've asked for. The seller comes back and says, hey, we'll do it all, or we'll do 4 or 5. Then we take that to the buyer. What's the conversation with the buyer at that point if the seller agrees to do less than what we asked for? Andy, you want to take it?
Yeah, I think it would just be then presenting it, and are they okay with it? And go back to the value of why they bought this in the first place. Hey, what's the major items that they decided to fix versus not fix, and just kind of walk them through it hand by hand. And then ultimately they have the opportunity to accept it or reject, or you could go back again, but that would just be messy.
I've heard Rick do this before too. I listen to your conversations. I've heard you say before, hey, I got some good news for you. Got the response back, and so you're going to do the majority of what we asked for. It's a pretty good response. The way that we present this to the client matters. So I love that opening. Hey, I got some good news. We got the response back, and although they're not going to do everything, they've agreed to all the major things. So now the option is, if you choose to, we can keep going. If you're not happy with the response, then we can cancel. Or in some cases, sometimes they'll do repair plus credits. They may do partial repairs, and we may be able to get some more credit for whatever's not done. So the third option in that scenario would be that we can accept what they've said. We can also say, hey, we only want to proceed, and we can get an extra $1,000 in credit or an extra $500 in credit. So there's nothing saying you can't have a combination of repairs and money from the seller. Maybe they have somebody who's a handyman, they can do this stuff, but they don't want to pay an AC guy to come in, so they're going to give you a credit for that part. That's allowable as well, assuming we have the addendum before we accept the response on the vendor that shows the credit in addition to that. So the way that we frame it, the language we use with the clients is important too. Our enthusiasm is good. We wouldn't say, oh my God, this is terrible, they didn't agree to 7 things, they're only going to do 5. We would never say that. Hey, great news. We asked for a pretty long list, and they're going to do the majority of everything we asked for. There's a couple things on here that I can give you a referral for our handyman, or I'll give you our plumber referral, and then we'll take care of this stuff after closing for you. But everything else is going to be done before you close. So that's great news. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to you to sign now. The next step is we're going to go ahead and reach out to your lender. I'll take care of it for you, and we're going to order the appraisal. All right, what's an appraisal? Generically speaking. Yeah. It's not a trick question.
It's an opinion of value.
Yeah, it is. An opinion of value. If you get 5 appraisers, how many different values might you get on the same house? Right? It's true. Why? Because appraisals are mostly subjective. Like, there's no handbook that says a fireplace is worth $2,000, an extra bedroom is worth $3,000, an extra car garage is worth $3,000. There's no handbook that tells you, or at least no appraisers I've ever met that would admit to having normal amount of adjustment. So the subjectivity in the appraisal comes from what that opinion of that appraiser is for something that is different or less than the subject property. That makes sense. So
there are guidelines we're supposed to follow, but I mean, in order to determine what value a pool gives in that community, they're supposed to go back and get a history of sales of similar floor plans with a pool without how much difference they sold for, and determine that's how much a pool meant to that community and to that type of home. They don't.
Yeah, now if you're the buyer's agent, then the next call is going to be to the lender, hey, we got through the inspection, go ahead and order the appraisal. If you're the listing agent, then what you might choose to do, if a home is vacant, you could choose to change that in MLS to please contact listing agent before entering. Right? Mark it as occupied. Why would you do that?
So we can get their contact information, because we want to send them stuff ahead of time.
That's right.
We want to try to make their job as easy as possible. You want to send them comps, you want to send them features, you want to send them the Fannie Mae form, and you want to make sure that you're preparing everything you can. And honestly, I know our buyer's agents have done it too. I mean, if the listing agent knows what they're doing, I mean, and the idea is we want that house for our clients, and we feel there's a concern. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sending comps to the appraiser on that end too, because it's not a guaranteed win from the buyer's agent's perspective to say, haha, I didn't appraise. You know, you may not get the house in because the seller may not come down. And so the idea is the client has identified that house that they want. If you're a buyer's agent, ask the listing agent. Are you meeting the appraiser at the house? Are you sending them comps ahead of time? Are you sending them the Fannie Mae form? Are you sending them a list of features? Are you helping to prepare for that appraisal? And if they say no, then you want to try to get the appraiser information and do that too. I mean, because it's our job to put deals together. And it doesn't matter which side we're on. But from a listing perspective, yes, we send that for every single one. Every appraiser gets that, and most of them now know from us that they're going to get that, and they'll they'll give me their information ahead of time because they know we're gonna send them that stuff.
Yeah. So when you first take the listing, you might ask the seller, hey, can you put together a list of everything you've done to the house, of the upgrades you've made, and what you spent on that?
And you do that for two reasons. One, it makes them feel important. You want them to be part of the, I always tell them, I want you guys to be part of this. I mean, there's been things I don't see, so write down everything that's important to you about the house, things that you've done, send it to me in a Word doc. If it's been done in the last 5 years, we'll get credit for it. If it's been done in the last 5 years and you have receipts, get me those receipts, because the more information I can provide an appraiser, the easier it makes their job in most cases.
Yeah. So, and then some listing agents, when they're working on like a normal agent who's maybe got 3 or 5 listings or whatever, a lot of times you see listing agents go meet the appraiser at the appointment. Not always, but I think it's a good idea, especially if you're just kind of getting started, because you may have questions. Sometimes just having a personal connection with that person or caring about them may make the difference in an extra $3,000 you need to make value. And I promise you that has happened before.
Absolutely.
So I think for anybody starting out, if you're carrying less than 10, 15 listings, which most of us are, there's really not a reason why you wouldn't go meet the appraiser, especially early on. Now, when you get to the point where you're doing a lot of these, then you know what the appraiser's looking for. They love the Fannie Mae form. They love the list of upgrades. The comparables as well. So you may choose to do some or all of that as a way for you to help your seller get the top value. The other reason you think about, sometimes it becomes a loss for the buyer when the home appraisal is low, because what happens if you've negotiated closing costs from the seller to the buyer at a contract price? Let's say you get $5,000 and you've agreed on a price of $265 on a home, and the home appraises at $260. What do you think the first thing the seller's going to want to do? We'll come down, but we're going to take the $5,000 away from your buyer. What if your buyer has to have the closing cost to close? Like, they don't have the ability, they don't have the money. Well, then you're really screwed, because it may look cool to get the house at a lower price and not at the expense of the money that you just got out of the buyer's pocket from the seller paid closing costs.
Well, keep in mind too that say $200,000 with $5,000 towards closing costs. If it appraised at $195, as a seller, as a listing agent, I'm saying, yeah, it appraised at what we're selling it for, right? We're getting $195, so you needed that to be $200,000 in order to get, you did that in order to get that $5,000. My seller's only getting $195, so it appraised exactly where we had it, what my seller nets.
Yeah, I've seen that in appraisals before, where they'll take the comparables. Let's say you've got 3, you have minimum 3. I've seen up to 6 or 7 in some cases, but at minimum 3 closed sales. Usually 1 or 2 in the subdivision, maybe 1 or 2 out of the subdivision, similar type homes in that area. And I've seen it where they'll say, hey, this home's over 200. Immediately they'll deduct $5,000 on the price, or $2,500 on the price, because they'll see in MLS the seller paid closing cost on that previous sale, and they'll immediately deduct the amount of the closing cost the seller paid from the value, the price immediately.
Are you recording?
I don't know.
Are they recording this?
I don't know.
Because we talk about it. What?
I think it's a live feed.
Oh, never mind. I won't.
Off the record.
No. It's just it's one of the things that, again, there's a lot of things in this industry that are the way they are that nobody can properly explain, and that is a perfect example of that. So a house sold for $200,000, paid $5,000 in closing costs. My listing's at $200,000. I'm paying $5,000 in closing costs, but that comp is $195. But I still have to appraise at $200. Yet, guess what? So did that one, right? In order for it to have sold at $200, it had to appraise at $200. So why now are we valuing it at $195?
Right.
And nobody can answer that. I mean, I've asked 5 different appraisers. Nobody can answer that. And so there's things that we do differently that I don't want recorded.
Yeah.
That make sure that I don't like that to happen. So I don't like seeing concessions in MLS as a closing, because it gets used against, and it's not a fair comparison. It literally is the exact same. If I'm at 200 with 5,000 towards closing costs, that comp sold for 200 with 5,000 towards closing costs. That's identical, except they're going to say that one's 195. Therefore, it doesn't make sense, because had to appraise at 200.
It's a weird thing that a lot of people don't think about until you get into the business and you see this happen over and over. Just because of experience and volume in real estate, you see some weird stuff, right? And this is one of those things that's just inexplicable, and yet it affects real estate transactions all the time. And now, I think that you're going to see it become more of a factor in the next year or two because the market's squeezing down. Do we think that buyers are going to have more opportunity to get closing costs or less opportunity? More, right? Are values stabilizing, and maybe in the upper levels you're seeing more price reductions? You are, 100%. And we've had more price reduction in the last 6 months than really we've seen in the market probably in the last 4 or 5 years.
8 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, so as the market shifts, so do the potential obstacles that we have to look out for our clients. And this is going to be one that I promise you will see more and more as the market constricts. And now, these appraisers, this is becoming a big deal. We've been in this, increasing market. Now you're starting to see appraisals come where you're in a stable market. And if things change even more so, you'll see what they call like a declining market. So that has to do with a projection of value in some cases, if that makes sense. So you correct me if I'm wrong on this. There is a possibility that in appraisals, you may have a more conservative final value in a market that's stable, and definitely if it's in a declining market, that you would have an assessment of value in an upward market. Because in an upward market, it makes sense that value the appraiser is giving is a more stabilized number that has a chance of going up. If an appraiser gives a value to a property now and the market's stable or declining, is there a chance that value could go down?
Okay, they're human beings. It's no different than if they're doing an appraisal and somebody's putting 100,000 down versus 0 down. Are they going to be tighter on that appraisal? Look, legally they'll tell you no, it has no impact on the appraisal, but they're human beings. If they're on the hook 100% versus 90, it makes a difference. So yes, if the market's appreciating, are they going to be a little bit more flexible versus if it's not? And that's where the Fannie Mae card comes in, which is what makes it more interesting even now that Fannie Mae and Freddie got rid of that form, and they're not requiring that form anymore. Some lenders are. In fact, Steve just emailed me yesterday, Loan Depot is not requiring it. So Loan Depot underwriters are not requiring that the appraiser do the Fannie Mae 1004 MC form anymore.
Oh,
so it's case by case from each lender, which is interesting because as the market has shifted, that history that's in that form can really help build a case for appreciation if you're trying to push it and it is evaluating why we think this one should sell for more than the other one, because it builds that history from 7 to 12, 3 to 6, 0 to 3 months to show that the market has appreciated in there. And I've gone through the trouble in communities in the past to literally go and show over the last year in January, these 2 models sold for here, and then in May they sold a little higher, and now we're in August, and here, that's a history of appreciation to be able to say, when you appraise one in August and give me the same value as the one that closed in May, that's not correct, because I was able to go back and show it's been that way. And so there's just different ways to go about it, but yes, it does make a difference, the type of market. And it's an opinion on the type of market. I had an appraisal in June that said stable.
Yeah.
It was like, and everything was showing that the values are going up, and he checked stable across every single thing, because in his opinion, it was stable. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he wasn't trying to buy a house himself at the time.
We know better, yeah. Well, it just hit me one thing that I totally spaced on in the inspection period is before once we submit the buyer's inspection notice, that's the end of our inspection period. You still have a time frame to back out. That's it. You don't come back and say, oh, by the way, we need to add this and this. Like when you submit that to the listing agent and essentially the seller, that's your opportunity. So what are a couple things that we may want to make sure we check before we send that? Maybe the HOA demand statement. Is there what could happen with the HOA? Maybe the house has been vacant and there's overgrown shrubbery and there's going to be a fine to the owner of the house until if that's not corrected. Is that something you might want to add in the Benzer? Trees to be trimmed away from the house, or bushes to be trimmed up, or grass in the front yard, or whatever the potential HOA violation is. Think about that, and then also if there are, and the title report, you want to obviously check, make sure there are no crazy liens or encumbrances that might affect your buyer. The HOA thing is something I forgot to mention earlier, which can be a factor if there's pending litigation. The HOA happens sometimes. More often than not, it is because there's been some kind of a HOA violation on that property specifically, overgrown weeds, grass, trees, whatever, that could convey to the next buyer.
Or exterior needs to be repainted in the next 6 months.
Right. Would your buyer want to know that? And could that be something they could ask? Even though paint is cosmetic, and we talk about not including cosmetic things on Benzers, might you include that if it's going to be an expense to your buyer because the HOA is cracking down on the color of the house?
Do you just find that out by calling the HOA, or is there another way?
You could, but normally it comes when you get what's called a HOA certification. Escrow orders it during the inspection period. It can take anywhere from 4 to 7 business days usually to get in. And on that statement, it'll talk about how much fees are due, what the normal fees are, and then also if there are any pending litigation against the HOA, if somebody sued the HOA, for example. It'll also tell you if there's any pending fines or if there's been any warnings for fines and what the time frame is for that information to be corrected or that repair to be corrected. So I have seen that before, and I failed to mention that it's important to know that when you get the HOA statement from escrow, read through it, because there may be scenarios where you've got a buyer that's about to jump into an ant pile with the HOA that we don't know about. And most commonly it has to do with costs incurred by the buyer after the close. That's not necessarily, if there are dues owed, that will be paid through the proceeds of the seller. If they just stop paying their HOA, happens a lot, then out of the proceeds that'll get paid. It will not affect if there's pending fines for needing to paint or needing to do shrubbery, that kind of stuff. Have you ever seen that, Rick? Has it run into that before? Any?
Yeah, and usually title's good to point that out. The other thing I was going to throw out is if you're with the buyer and I just had this happen literally twice last month, all the utilities weren't on, and I didn't know it, gas specifically. So if you're with the buyer and they're like, yeah, this is the one, just do a quick check. I had 2 where it wasn't until the inspection that we realized there was a lot on the gas. The seller's agent didn't know. The seller, it was vacant. The seller had turned off the gas, so now it's this huge hassle. The inspector's got to go out. One of them, we had to extend the inspection period because it was like a Thursday. Southwest couldn't go out till Tuesday and put the gas back on. So it's a weird one, but just a lot of times the lock box is on the gas meter anyway. Just look for that little lock. Obviously, you can see if the lights are on, turn the hose big on or whatever. But if you know which one they're going to ride on, it'll save you some headaches later. So make sure all the utilities.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because in our experience, Southwest Gas is not next day. They're like 3 to 5 business days normally is what we see. So what it means is if you're on day 5 of your inspection period, the inspector gets there like, hey, by the way, I can check everything except for the furnace and the stove and the water heater and everything that's run by gas.
And believe me, the buyer's looking at you at that point going,
Yeah, why didn't you?
Like,
Yeah, it just happened to me as well, that short sale. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I mean, my fault.
So you check out on the show.
Well, I'm just suggesting. I mean, I'm going to start doing that now.
Yeah.
If we're at one and they're like, yeah, this is it, I'm going to go back to the office to write. I'm just going to do that quick check. Let's see another.
Yeah, and it's also a question for the listing agent. Hey, we're going to go ahead and submit, a contract, or once we've accepted a contract, then you may, hey, just making sure that all the utilities are on. If gas is not on, then we need to delay and potentially increase our inspection period. So a couple things about that I just forgot to mention earlier in regards to the inspection. So make sure you check the HOA statement and make sure gas is on. Yeah, those are 2 things that be important to you during the inspection period. All right, so from a time frame, you had all of this stuff that happened up front, right? The transaction is front loaded in the first 12 to 15 days with a bunch of activity. inspections, Benzer, seller response, right? Everything happens like in this whirlwind. The buyer's getting all this paperwork. Seller's getting paperwork from escrow. Fill out this ID statement. We need your payoff information, right? Sellers are getting stuff, so we need to make sure that we're explaining and they're expecting this barrage of emails, because it's going to start happening within a couple days of opening escrow. The buyer needs to fill out their information in the escrow system. The seller needs to fill out their information, because escrow is going to go, they do this ID statement. It's right, if you've ever done this, wherever you lived the last 10 years, what have your last 10 years jobs been, right? Who are your, what are all your kids' names, whatever. They ask a lot of stuff on there. And it can be a little bit time consuming. The buyers need to be on that quickly. Sellers need to be on that quickly. So let's make sure they know to be able to look up for these emails. There'll be stuff they can sign electronically, some stuff they have to print out, complete, scan back in. If they need help with that, that's something we can do as well. Do you want to come to the office? We can do it together. I can print it out for you and then scan it. So there are ways that we can be of value for the client in regards to paperwork up front as well. Then we do the appraisal. Now we got this lull, right? Now we got nothing going on if there's a loan involved, because now we're waiting on loan approval. And how long is a normal Arizona escrow? Number of days. 30 to 45 is usually safe. If there's a loan, if it's a cash buyer, a couple weeks, we get it in. If there's no HOA, we close it in 3 days. If there's an HOA, because we're waiting on the HOA statement, it can take 5 to 7 business days in some cases. Then you may have a close of escrow on a cash deal for a couple weeks. If it's their loan involved, minimum 30 days in most cases, up to maybe 40, 45. So what happens is the first 15 days are going, and then we order the appraisal. Assuming there are no challenges with the appraisal, then you've got another week and a half to get to final loan approval. So there's not much that's going on in that in the 3rd week of the program. Then the 4th and 5th week is where it gets hectic again. So we've talked about inspections, we've talked about Benzer, we've talked about ordering the appraisal. Let's just talk about real quick what happens when an appraisal comes in below the sales price. So the lender, first thing that happens, the lender will email us usually or call us and say, hey, we have a challenge. The property appraised at $260 and you're in the contract at $265. What do we do now? Anybody been through that before? Well, the first thing you need is a copy of the appraisal. So does the buyer have to release the appraisal to the seller? No. If we're asking the seller to reduce the price, do we probably need to provide a copy of the appraisal to the seller? Yes. That's the proof that what we're saying is true. So if it appraises $20,000 above sales price, do we need to show the appraisal to the seller? Hell no. It came in at value, sufficient value, with no repairs needed. That's the verbiage for it. So it comes in low. You're like, man, okay, what happens next? Well, how have you handled that as a listing agent, Craig? That's probably happened sometimes? Mm-hmm. What is the process on the seller side if the appraisal comes in low?
Well, the first thing to do is go through the appraisal and just see if there's anything that I can challenge on it. The problem with it is a couple things. One, you can't challenge adjustments. Okay, so you can only challenge comps. You cannot challenge adjustments. So if they said that pool was worth $8,000 and it's a pool spa and 3 years old and whatever, and you feel like it should have been 12 or 15, you can't challenge that. If you feel like they made too much of an adjustment for lot size or didn't give us value for backing to a park or something like that, you cannot challenge adjustments. You can only challenge comps. Well, in most cases, we've already sent them comps. So then it becomes you got to go through and try to specifically say, here's why we feel this comp is a better comp than comp number one based off of this, and you try to build a case and explain it. The biggest challenge with that is you're challenging it back to the appraiser.
Like, hey, you suck at your job. Let me tell you how to do it right.
Yeah.
Right. And so in most cases, it's. I mean, I've had ones with factual errors where they said this comp had 2 baths and it had 2.5, and I've been able to point that out and nothing changed. It's very rare, I can tell you, in 15 and a half years, and less than a handful of times, if I've had to challenge 200, 300 appraisals, I've had to change less than a handful of times. It very rarely changes. And so then we have to make decisions at that point whether or not we're willing to negotiate, figure it out, or it's just not gonna happen. And the biggest misconception, and I would get it a lot in the past, was, the appraisal came in at 260 and they send over a copy of the appraisal and an addendum to change the sale price to 260. And that's not how it works. It's like saying, well, the appraisal, we're at 265, appraisal came in at 268, great, can I send over an addendum now we're raising the price to 268? And the buyer's agent would be like, well, no, of course not. I'm like, well, why would we just assume we're doing it the other way? But that happens all the time. And so I think from the buyer's perspective, they understand is, okay, it appraised low, here are options. We can see, and that's why I said when an agent sends it over and says, it appraised low, I say, great, have you talked to your buyer yet? What are they willing to do? And most of the time they haven't, and they say, okay, we'll find out what they're willing to do, and I'll talk to my seller and see if we can't figure this out. See if they're willing to pay anything above appraised value. So I'll see if the seller's willing to come down after I went through the appraisal. And a lot of times I'll go through the appraisal and I'll start the challenge process first, and I'll explain, hey, to the seller, we're challenging that. And I'll a lot of times include them in what I'm sending back so that they understand the work that we're putting in, and here's why I disagree with this or whatnot, so they see, but also with the expectation that it's probably not going to change. I mean, we're probably not going to get any resolve on this. It's just not going to happen. So, and then you just have to make that decision where we're at. If it's $2 grand, they have to make a decision on, we want to go back on the market, go through another inspection, go through all of that. If you're a buyer, you want to have to go back out and try to duplicate that house and pay for inspections again, pay for another appraisal, go through that whole process. And again, understanding it's an opinion of value. It's it doesn't mean it's worth that. Okay, it means that this person felt that that's what it was.
Yeah, so I mean, the outcomes are either the seller comes down to match the appraisal, seller stays at the contract price, or you meet in the middle, or in some cases, if the seller's already paid closing costs,
right.
One natural thing is for the seller to take the amount of closing costs away that we're short on the appraisal, so it's the same net to the seller, right? In other words, that makes sense, I'm guessing, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be most likely. I don't know. I see most of the time sellers just come down. I don't see. I mean, in 8 or 9 years ago, maybe, or in stronger markets, even, in 05, 06, people were paying 20, 25 grand over appraisal. I mean, they agreed to the price. It appraises low. They're like, I'll pay it. Like I saw that a lot in 05, 06. Not as much since then, although there've been a couple that have been in. But appraisals, that's. I think that we may get back into that. I have a feeling that we're within the next year or two, we're probably going to see that become a little more of a challenge than it has been in an upward market. For anybody who's been in the business less than 10 years, it's totally different. Like the way that we work with our clients, so the advice we give, the presentations change as the market changes, right? The advice we give tends to be a little bit different based on where we are at that time. And so it's interesting to look over that time frame, because a lot of people look, I don't know the numbers. I would say that there's probably a majority of people who've gotten into real estate in the last 5 to 6 years, right? Which has been awesome. It's been like a great market. It's good when things change. It's just a little different message. That's all. People are still buying, still selling. This is the chance that we have to really make a big wave in the real estate industry by being the strongest agents. As the market just stabilizes. It's not going down. It's just stabilizing out. If you look at appreciation nationwide as a big picture over the last 30 to 40 years, 3 to 4% is what you would expect to see. What happened in Texas, like these states that didn't get pounded like Arizona got pounded, they're just seeing steady raise. That's what's normal, 3, 4%, which is what most of the people I'm reading and the economists are saying now is what they think is in store for Arizona. The message I'm giving my clients right now is, look, we've just stabilized off. If you bought in the last 5 or 6 years, you did awesome. That was great timing. You've probably seen a gain, and now it's just going to kind of stabilize off.
To return to a normal market.
Yeah, that's it. So let's talk about we're at the appraisal. Anybody familiar with the loan process or the loan approval process, what they do and how that works? Because this is a time frame for that. If we're talking about the timeline, this is when we get in the loan approval. Are you familiar with the process of loan approvals? So simply put, it's like this. The most lenders use automated underwriting systems. They call it desktop underwriter. You'll hear it called DU for short. It's an automated underwriting system used by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, which are the people that back the loans, essentially buy the loans. And it is a system where they look at income and credit and assets to determine the risk factor of that buyer. Also included in the approval process is the appraisal or the evaluation of the actual property. So what happens is the lender will be working on documents. They're going to get verifications of employment behind the scenes with the employer. They're going to ask the buyer for updated bank statements. They need to see any more assets. If there's anything on their credit that they're disputing, that this would be the time in this time frame that they would get letters from creditors. They may pay off a credit card, or they may decide what they need to do. By no means is any buyer buying anything like cars or furniture or anything that's going to affect their cash on hand or their credit. Never. No.
No going to IKEA and open up a credit card.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to get furniture for the house and a 0% financing for 3 years. I went ahead and just bought it before it closed escrow. Bad idea. Don't do it. So, what we really are cognizant of, the good lenders will explain this to the buyers. It never hurts to have a second voice of, hey, don't buy anything substantially. Don't go apply for any credit. Just understand that. Just hang tight. As soon as we close on this, man, you go crazy. But until then, hang tight. Do not apply for credit. Do not make any major expenditures. Don't use your credit cards if at all possible. This is the message, because part of the process with the loan approval is that they're going to re-pull the credit. They've got to have a credit report within 30 days of closing. If the initial credit report was 3 months ago for the pre-qual that we use, they're going to update the credit report. Guess what they're going to find if you've applied for credit? Inquiries. Then what happens is, did you open an account? What were you doing? So these are things that buyers tend to get themselves in trouble with during the process of loan approval. So automated approval, they're going to combine that with verifications of employment. They're going to combine that with the loan or with the appraisal of the property, and then they're going to get final loan approval. Now, it'll be, first of all, you'll get an approval that is based on some what they call prior to doc conditions. Prior to the loan documents being issued, there are conditions most of the time the lender's going to want. For example, maybe they need an updated pay stub if you got paid from when you started the process. If you paid every 2 weeks, they're going to need one since you started. If they probably are going to need, make sure you got your homeowner's insurance handled, that you've already got a declaration page or an estimate for your insurance. They're going to want to make sure that your bank statements are updated. If you've been in the process for a couple months, they want to make sure that you've got those. They need at least 2 months in succession, most recent, for the loan file in most cases. So they're going to do all this paperwork and all that. Maybe there's a letter of explanation for a late payment you had on your Visa card in 2002, and you're going to explain what happened. All these things go into play until we get final loan approval. In the meantime, the seller is kind of like, they're packing, but they're like, is it going to happen or not happen? We're through the inspection, we're through the appraisal, now we're waiting on a loan. Now, by the way, can a loan get denied after all of this stuff happens? Yeah, it absolutely can. Can the buyer walk away and still get their earnest money back if that happens? Yeah. Is the seller screwed in that situation? Yeah. So there's never, like, if you think about it from the seller's perspective, there's never like a rest easy period for a seller.
When they rewrote the contract in 2016, Kenny and I were one of the people that they asked for opinions on, and that was one of the things that we did. Like California, Texas, a lot of states have 21 days. All contingencies to be removed and earnest money non-refundable after 21 days. It just hasn't happened here. And I kind of always joke, it's the attorneys that write the contract. Until it happens to them, nothing will change. When they're selling their $1 million home to buy a $2 million home, and 3 days before closing, they've packed up boxes, everything, they're getting ready to move, and then get a credit denial, and their buyer cancels and takes their $10,000 earnest money back, and they've got nothing. Then it'll change. But until then, right now, I mean, it's just, again, I think inspection period should be 7 days. I think all contingencies should be removed after 14 days. I mean, I think the buyer should have already done it. I think it puts the lender and puts them on the hook a little bit more to do their job and to make sure that what they're issuing to a pre-qual to a buyer is actually legitimate and going to happen. You know, I would love to see, in some cases, a lender have responsibility for earnest money. I mean, if they're gonna tell a buyer they're qualified, then the buyer doesn't do anything wrong, nothing changes, and then 5 days before closing, something comes up and they weren't able to do it, I think the lender should be on the hook for that. But again, that's just because I deal with listings, and there's nothing worse in the world than having to make a phone call 3 days before closing. So, I mean, I've sat in title signing seller docs and get the phone call that the buyer's not qualified, while my seller's signing thinking we're closing in 3 days. I mean,
It's a nightmare.
It's an absolute horrible, and it's probably one of the biggest flaws in Arizona's purchase contract is that it is 100% buyer weighted. I mean, it is 100% about the buyer, and the seller has very little protection. The cure notice is a joke. I mean, the fact that you're supposed to have docs 3 days prior, so you don't, so we cure you, it gives you 3 days, and you get docs there that on the third day, now we're past our closing date, and you gotta cure them for me to close, they get another 3 days to cure that. I mean, it's just constantly about the buyer.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is a mistake.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally buyer weighted on the contract in Arizona for sure. You know, so then we communicate, because now we're in the final week, and of course this is whenever everything's going to happen. Now, mind you, you got buyers who are boxing up their stuff. You got sellers who they're going to move somewhere. They're either buying another house or they're whatever. In most cases, or sometimes you get an investment property you're selling. But in most cases, the people we're working with, they're going to move somewhere, right? So everybody's lined up. You got these moving trucks are all ready to go, like praying that everything goes as it's supposed to go. And now you got to really work through this final last 3 or 4 days. Now,
it's why it's important, from a listing agent perspective, if you have a listing, to get weekly loan status updates from the lender and actually pay attention to them and find out, because I've been able to foresee things going wrong ahead of time. It's part of, we talk about in listing appointments, right? And I all the time, if you're going in for surgery, you want a doctor that's done it 10 times or 1,000 times, because during surgery there's going to be complications, and that doctor that's done it 1,000 times either going to foresee it before it happens, know how to fix it once it happens, be able to deal with it versus not. It's the same thing. There are complications in every real estate transaction. As a listing agent, if you're getting loan status updates from the lender weekly and staying on top of that and understanding, as you explained, the difference between a prior to doc condition or prior to funding condition. Oh, we can't release docs because of this condition. And I always ask, can it be a prior to funding condition? Does it have to be a prior to doc, or could it be a prior to funding? Can we at least get docs out, get the buyer to sign as they work on that, as opposed to wait? And to be honest with you, some lenders are like, huh? Like when I'll ask them that, they don't know. And then they have to go back and find out, and then it turns out to come to find out, yes, or try to get in touch go bypass a loan officer and get in touch with the processor and underwriter directly to find out what's going on and get answers and things, because they are required, it is in the contract that they're required to provide loan status updates on a week when requested by the seller. And we make it very clear that we ask for weekly updates, and good lenders will do that on their own. Good lenders will do that, but it's a conversation from that initial conversation with the lender. When I call before we accept the offer, our expectations are this: my transaction coordinator, once a week will be getting a loan status update from you. We expect docs to be the title, CD to be out 3 days prior. We expect to close on time, and it's setting that expectation up from the beginning. And one thing that I've learned over the years, when you get to 2 days before closing and the buyer's lender goes, hey, we need another week, the best way to find out where this is going is to say, okay, I can talk to my seller, and in the email, copy the buyer's agent, say, go ahead and do an addendum to close on or before, but make the earnest money non-refundable immediately, released to the seller and payable to the seller immediately upon no seller default. As long as the seller doesn't default on it, that basically we'll extend it, we're making earnest money non-refundable. Then you'll find out from the lender whether or not they actually believe that 5 more days is going to get the deal done, or whether there's a problem. Because if they won't advise their buyer to make the earnest money non-refundable, there's a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Going back to the beginning, Craig, you said you asked for a bunch of stuff, like, you know, with the pre-qual in the beginning, like the check stubs and all that, and obviously things can change for a buyer in that time, but that obviously shows you a better indication of the transaction.
What I'm asking for is, if you look on the pre-qual form, it's 23 through 25 is pay stubs, and it's yes, no, NA, tax returns, yes, no, NA, W-2s, yes, no, NA, credit liability documentation, yes, no, those boxes, I'm looking for those boxes to be checked yes.
Right, before you even accept the offer.
Period.
Right.
Because if they haven't done that, they don't know.
Right.
It's a verbal conversation. If they haven't verified assets, debt to income ratio, any of those type of things that actually matter, then they haven't done anything.
Right.
Wells Fargo, their commercials they make such a big deal about what do they call it, priority buyer, and all that is pulled credit, had a verbal conversation. They haven't done anything differently than that. Like our lenders, like with Steve won't issue a pre-qual if he hasn't done that. Like we train our buyer's agents, you don't go and outshow buyers without that being done, because otherwise you're wasting time. If they haven't done that, it doesn't mean things can't change. That's why I tell my sellers all the time, look, I got this, pre-qual's great, talk to the lender, everything's great. Things can change. I've had buyers, we had a buyer pass away 2 days before closing. Well, obviously can't buy the house in that case. If the buyers lose jobs, things along those lines. So it doesn't mean it's a guarantee, but it means that we're doing everything that we can. It means that, our fallout rate is significantly lower than the majority because of those type of things. And it's not as big an issue today as it was 3 or 4 years ago. I very rarely get pre-qual, and I don't know, it's because we have it in our listings now, people read it ahead of time or what, but it's very rare where I get pre-quals now where they've only done credit pull and haven't collected those docs. But like I said, USAA, for example, they won't do it. Wells Fargo won't do it unless you hammer them to do it. They don't want to do it, which I've always asked the loan officer, why would you even want to start this process without that? Like, why would you even want to get into wasting your time without having verified all that information from the buyer? And it's just one of those things that you will have, and as the market shifts and as it's shifting, again, I've been through this long enough to see it now, you're going to have more desperation in the market. You're going to be more lenders that got into it 5 years ago because of how much money was out there, and now it's shifted, and they're going to say, oh yeah, you're pre-qualified, and they're going to spend the next 45 days throwing darts against the wall trying to find some lender out there that'll take this loan and then never be able to do it. And because they're desperate, hoping that they can pull it off. And so, it's an important part of making sure, and you're continually through that process, because it's not just, okay, we got through inspections and appraisal, and now we're done for 2 weeks and we don't have to do anything. It's continually to make sure, hey guys, timeline's coming up. We're all the time, email and title, have you received docs from the buyer yet? No, boom, call the lender, email the lender, where are docs at? When are we expecting docs? Oh, there's 1 or 2 conditions, great, what are those conditions? Are they, whatever, can they be prior to funding as opposed to prior to doc? You try to create solutions to try to foresee it, because if I can call my seller 8 days out and say, hey, there's a good chance we're not closing on time now, here's why, versus 2 days out, the emotion behind that conversation is a lot different. And so you're that. And from a buyer's agent's perspective, I think, I can't tell you how many times the buyer's agent's non-existent through that part. Like, we're emailing the lender's going, no, the buyer hasn't gotten me this, or I'm waiting on this, and the buyer's agent's copied on the email, and just zero response, zero communication, zero anything, just there. And then to me, that's part of your job as well as a buyer's agent, going, hey, following up with your buyer's lender, how are we doing? Is the buyer getting you everything? Where are you at? Are we on time? Is everything moved? Oh no, you know what, they changed insurance and now they're shopping insurance again. Boom, call your buyer. Hey, look, you got to pick an insurance company. We got to move. We don't close on time. We could lose our earnest money. And the seller could ask me, I've done per day charges. You want to extend it 10 days? Great, $50 a day. We're releasing earnest money. We want $50 a day charge. And so it's part of it being involved in the transaction, not just letting it kind of drive itself.
How
how soon should title have docs if you're, like, before signing?
The minimum is 3 days.
How,
Minimum is 3 days prior.
okay,
And even that's, the way it's worded in there is all kind of screwy now, because it used to clearly say docs to title, now it says like, loan approval, the CD, I can't think of how it's worded now, but basically the idea is they are supposed to have docs to title and buyer signed 3 days prior to close of escrow.
So let's say the process is going to be the loan gets approved, and then they're going to have prior to doc conditions we talked about, right? There should be anything that the underwriters we have to have before we're going to actually print the loan documents or prepare them. And then the lender, this is called a CD. It stands for closing disclosure. Closing disclosure is kind of like, hey man, we're good to go. We got everything we need. We're releasing the loan documents to go. Now, once the CD is issued, the buyer can't sign for 3 days. So you have a 3-day waiting period. So if you're for 3 days, 4 days from close of escrow, and you don't have a CD from the buyer, it's going to be a challenge. You may not, you probably won't close on time. Hopefully you're still going
And
to
a
close.
lot of lenders like to look at the closing date as kind of a suggestion. It's kind of like a nice little target that they'd like to hit. And a lot of them are very proud to tell you that, oh no, we fund same day. So they have no problem throwing docs to the title company at 10 o'clock in the morning on the closing date and then blaming the title company for not being able to get it done because title will not schedule buyers to sign until they have docs. Because they've heard for years from lenders, oh, docs are going to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and here we are at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're still not there. So they're not going to schedule a signing. So you have to, like, that's again, conversation with the lenders. I don't want docs there the day of closing because then for them, they wash their hands. They go, I did my job, I got docs there, it's title's fault now. They love to throw everything into title and blame title for everything when the contract clearly states the docs should have already been there for issues like, oh, there was a form the seller needs to sign in the buyer's docs, or there was a mistake on something, or this lender is in California and they physically need docs back before they'll fund. They won't take them over email, so then we have to FedEx, so then we have an extra day. That's why those 3 days were built in. So when you have a lender that's sending docs to title the day of closing, it's just not the way to do things.
Yeah, I have one that's first one supposed to close Monday the 10th. This whole thing is making me, yeah, we have a delay with the FHA amendatory clause. The lender is saying how's getting the attached FHA amendatory clause executed coming along. We have everything from the buyer ready to submit back to underwriting for clear to close except this.
Mm-hmm.
So if that was you, I mean.
Well, first of all, you can docu-sign the FHA mandatory clause. All that's stating is that it's a stupid government form that says the same thing that's already in our contract, basically, that if it doesn't appraise, the buyer's entitled to earn this money back. But that's everybody can sign that docu-sign. That should not hold up docs. That should not be a prior to doc condition.
I talked to him this weekend. He said the seller's like in her 90s. She's ill, so everything nothing can be docu-signed or anything.
So you're waiting on the seller's signature of the FHA mandatory clause, I'm guessing?
Tell them to keep moving forward. We're going to get it signed, and that it will make it a prior to funding condition. I mean, I have a hard time believing that's really the issue. That's where I say that's, to me, would tell me there's something else going on.
If there's, I mean, that's a really good question though, Susan, because think about it like this. If the prior to doc versus prior to funding conditions, this is an important topic I'm glad we brought it because most people you don't hear this very much. But here's the difference. If that's a prior to doc condition, it means that we're waiting on this 90-year-old lady who probably isn't going to be able to docu-sign it, I'm guessing. She's ill,
No, she doesn't
right? She needs to sign it in person.
Yes.
So then it's either the listing agent takes that document over to her and do that, or what happens if we can move it to a prior to funding condition? To Craig's point, it's a smart idea. Prior to funding means funding is when the wire goes out from the lender into escrow to fund the loan. Essentially, it means that money's being sent on behalf of the buyer from the lender. So prior to funding means that if the documents could be drawn and that moved to a prior to funding condition, like Craig was saying, that she could sign it when she signs all of her other paperwork at the title company.
And most of the time, the FHA and VA mandatory clause comes with the docs.
Yeah, you would sign that whenever you go to the.
I mean, honestly, it's my seller's already signed, the buyer docs come, and then all of a sudden, Jenny or, title will be like, hey, and send it to us, and we have to send it to them DocuSign. And most of the time, that comes with the docs. So for them to say they can't draw docs because of that, there's something else going on there.
Can I ask you a last question too?
Yeah.
Okay, we're supposed to close tomorrow, which was set up a week ago.
Okay.
Did an addendum. Settlement statement was sent to the buyer on Friday. I couldn't find it this weekend on the secure thing, so he just sent it to me. Title's telling me that they don't have docs yet. So, newbie question to you guys instead of to title, so they don't know I'm an idiot. Should they already have docs? We're supposed to close tomorrow.
Well, if you accelerated the contract closing date.
The lender did too. He was all about it.
Okay.
The answer is yes. I mean, they should have had
They
docs.
should already have docs,
Yeah.
right? If we're signing tomorrow morning, they should already have docs.
Mhm.
Yeah, it'd be weird that, what was the purpose of speeding up the close of escrow?
I don't know on the seller's behalf, but my buyer wants to move in, so
Okay.
I don't care.
So it's your buyer's lender that hasn't sent docs.
Yes, and my
Yeah,
friend.
and it's almost always the lender we're waiting on. In 90% of the cases, the loan is what takes the longest time. We can get through everything else quickly. We're just waiting on the lender.
And it's
So
partly because, I mean, the majority of it's done the last 2 weeks to 10 days. They're gonna look at it and they're gonna go, I got 45 days to close, they've got another loan, they've got this loan, so they don't do a whole lot on the process, and then they try to hurry up and rush it. And that's all, again, like I said, all they do is look at the closing date and go, as long as I get docs there by the closing date, I'm good.
yeah.
And
So
that's just, I mean, that's just the industry, unfortunately.
So let's move in. The last thing I want to talk about with this, and then we're going to spend maybe 10 minutes before we wrap up on aftercare and communication after the fact. So let's get into, lastly, is going to be signing appointments. Okay, so we're waiting on documents. Finally they're there. That's a huge milestone, because usually if the loan documents get to escrow, unless the buyer dies or loses their job, it's probably going to close. So that's a big milestone of like, man, we're almost there, right? We're in the end of the fourth quarter. So documents hit to escrow. Now, the seller and the buyer are normally going to sign separately. The seller's documents are minimal. You might have 5 to 7 pages max on the seller side. It's quick, 3 minutes, right? 3 or 4 minutes are done. And most of those can be DocuSign. Now, you're going to have a buyer's side, especially if they have financing involved. That's a much more extensive stack of paperwork and time consuming. So when the documents hit to escrow is then going to balance all the numbers. They're going to figure out what the fees are from the loan. They're going to put this closing or estimated closing statement together, which they're going to send to the lender. The lender's going to make sure the numbers balance out with what the lender has on their end, and then they're going to send it to the escrow is going to send that document to the agents involved. We're going to review it, make sure the numbers look correct on us. Very, very, very important factor for us agents to review every single estimated closing statement that comes over. That's when we catch mistakes and catch issues, right? With seller credits, I see that happen a lot. If we only put an addendum that said $2,000 and it was supposed to be $6,000, you're going to catch that then if there was a mistake made, right? Most agents catch commission mistakes in the closing statement as well. Just the timing is really important to look at the numbers on behalf of everybody involved in the transaction, make sure those numbers look good. Once everybody signs off, says those numbers look good, or we say we need to adjust this, this, and this, they adjust it, send us a new version. We're ready to go. And they're going to go ahead and order, they're going to go ahead and set up an appointment for the buyer and the seller. Now the seller, a lot of times, would you agree, will sign earlier in the transaction? There's not a lot of waiting time for a seller. There's documents can be signed early in the process. The buyers are almost always the last 1 or 2 days before closing normally. In most cases, in an ideal world, the buyer would sign 2 or 3 days prior to closing. The reality is most buyers are signing the day before closing. So they're going to go into the title company, or if they live out of state or out of area, or they just can't both, if it's a couple, they both got to be there. Then most title companies will send a mobile notary. Costs you $150, $125, something like that. We use that all the time for people who live out of state. If they just can't get in, or they live in Avondale or whatever, and the title company's over here, then we'll send a mobile notary to them. And in that process, that appointment's usually anywhere from about 45 minutes to an hour. We're gonna go through and sign all the paperwork for the loan and title and all that done. And then the documents will go back to the title company. So if it's a notary, the notary will actually bring the physical documents back to the title company, who will then scan the docs in, send the scanned email to the lender, who will then, in most cases, release the wire or the funds from the lender into escrow. So the buyer's already put their deposit in, $5,000 up front. We learned from the estimated closing statement they need to bring in another $22,572. They bring that money in to combine with their $5,000. The rest of the money comes from the loan to meet 100% of the requirements of the sales price and the closing costs and the prepaids. That makes sense? So all the money comes in as a credit from the buyer, including loan, the initial deposit, and in closing wire. Now, the buyer's going to bring a check in. It's got to be a cashier's check or a wire. Buyers aren't going to bring a personal check in for their final closing funds. It's okay up front for deposit to use a personal check, but almost never is it okay to use a personal check for closing funds. They'll go to the bank and get a cashier's check they'll bring with them to the title company, made out to the title company for the amount that was their cash to close on the estimated closing statement, which we looked at before their appointment. You following this? Okay. Seller's going to decide with escrow, do they want the money wired to them? Most of the time I would say yes, do that. If the seller chooses to, they can also have a check cut. The advantage of a wire is there's no bank hold. A lot of banks, if you make a deposit for $100,000, you're not going to see that money or all the money for 7 days, 10 days. A lot of banks will put, if you're making an excessively higher deposit than normal, you're not going to have access to all that money. So a wire is immediate access, and it's usually the day of closing or the next business day after closing.
So seller is saying how they want that money sent.
Correct.
Yep, seller's going to tell escrow how they'd like it done, and they'll have a choice. There's a form they fill out. And usually you tell sellers, hey, have your checkbook ready, or have the account number of the account you want it to go into. Because the routing number and the account number is what the bank will use, or what escrow will use to wire that money into.
And it has to match. It's important if the home is in a trust, they have to have an account in that trust because the funds have to be made out to the trust. So if they don't have an account set up for that trust, the money's going to get wired. It's going to be the check or wire is being made out to that trust. So you have to prepare them ahead of time. Say, hey, you need to do it. If you don't have an account, you need to open an account in that trust name because they can't make out the proceeds to the people if the house is in the trust name. Those are important things to make sure that they understand that they have accounts set up for those. Because we've had that before where they wanted the check made out to them, but the house is in the trust name. So a title company can only pay the funds to the name that's on the title, which would be the trust. And by the way, right here across the hall is a great resource. It's a great resource to be able to walk over there and ask questions and get information on closings and title and all that stuff and what title does and be prepared for it. And I think we had talked at some point about they were going to include like a mock closing as part of Ignite so that you guys could sit through and see what it's like. You need to be at your signings. You need to be at a seller or buyer signing because it's important parts to wrap up the deal.
Yeah, that's our team policy is that, I mean, if there's any possible way, you go to the closing. Look, are you going to have people who are going to sign out of state, out of area? Yes. Are you going to be able to go to those? No. Anybody that signs in the Valley, we strongly encourage our agents to go to every closing. Why? It's the last impression. This is like they're signing their freaking life away, right? They're going to take a mortgage out for $300,000. It's like a big deal, right, for people. And the comfort level of you being there. Are you able to answer all their questions? Probably not. They're mostly lending questions at that stage, right? They're questions about their amount and fees and all that. It's really more like a handhold, a comfort level. It's an act of service that we can offer our clients to ease them through that final stage, right? Which is where, now you've got a final walkthrough as a buyer's agent, right?
I was saying from a listing perspective, I may not have seen those clients in 60 days. And I might have seen them at the listing appointment and not have seen them since, right? Because everything else has been done through DocuSign, through everything else. So it's a great opportunity for me to be there, hopefully I remember them and recognize them when they walk in. No, but I mean, it's a great opportunity to be there and just to wrap up and answer any questions. Like, I always bring a copy of the net proceeds sheet that I had them sign when we accepted the offer too, just to make sure, so that when they look through the settlement statement, they go, oh, I thought the buyer was paying this, and I go, no, here, see, this is when we signed this, we agreed to this in the contract, things like that. So it's important part of that to be there for that.
And we have a lot of buyers who choose to do a final walkthrough the same day they sign. So they may just take the day off, for example. A lot of times you'll see people who will take a couple of days off around the moving date to prepare and go sign. So we'll talk about that, in the process of, hey, if you're going to we're scheduled to close. I always, a couple things I forgot. I like to do Thursday closing dates.
Yes.
Because if something happens or we get delayed by a day, you can still close on Friday and still move over the weekend. So I highly suggest that you choose, as a buyer's agent, you choose a Thursday closing date.
Wednesday or Thursday, always,
Yeah.
So you have time.
Yeah, and especially if it's at the end of the month, because title companies get bombarded. Some people want it closed at the end of the month. That if they're trying to get a signing in, there may not be any signing appointments available on the on a Thursday before or on a Friday before the end of the month. It's the most hectic time. So away from the end of the month is better, and a Wednesday, Thursday closing date. Those are some little tips that you can use to overcome potential hurdles. So we do a final walkthrough, right, which is sometimes the same day as they sign, sometimes it's the day before. The final walkthrough is to make sure the repairs have been done. We're going to ask for the receipts. Sometimes if they fix the roof, you're not going to be able to go on the roof necessarily. Right? I don't really carry a ladder in my car for that. Although we're going to see a receipt that they fixed this many cracked tiles, they did, the mortar caps were resealed, they fixed fascia, whatever. And then sometimes if we accepted a credit, there are no repairs. We're just going to make sure the house didn't flood or somebody didn't break in and tear out drywall or vandalize the house, right? Though that has happened before. So the final walkthrough primarily is to determine if the repairs were done that were agreed to, or if we took a credit or no repairs were requested, just to make sure the house is in a similar condition it was in at the time of the inspection, in that case, or that the repairs have been done, right? Now, you go through all that, buyer signed, seller has signed, and we come to closing date. And the closing date is essentially a couple things are going to happen. One is that the buyer's lender is going to wire their funds in from the loan into escrow, and then the escrow officer is going to make sure that all the money balances, all the numbers make sense, they all come together, and then they're going to release the deed to record. Now, this is an electronic process where the new actual deed of trust that transfers the ownership into the new buyer's name will be released electronically to the county recorder's office in Maricopa County or Pinal County. In our case, and then once the county gives us written confirmation, we're done. Now that normally happens in mid to late afternoon in most cases. It can happen as early as noontime, but I usually will tell buyers that it will be officially yours by mid to late afternoon normally. That's at the point where they can start moving in. You can give them the keys. So usually I'll take the key out of the lockbox in the walkthrough, and then I'll meet them back at the house once we get recording confirmation so they can start moving in. In some cases, we may just have instructions of, hey, you were not to enter the house until you get recording confirmation, and here's how you do it.
When you just grab that key, I always just leave it in there because I think, oh, they don't want me to have it, but.
Well, that's a good point. Sometimes you need to, if they need to get back in, an example would be they stage the house. And they're going to move the staging stuff out, and they only have the key that's in the lockbox. I wouldn't take the key out the day before. So those would be things I would communicate with the listing agent just to see if they have a need to get back in. Otherwise, I would go ahead and take the key personally, hold on to it until we record, and then usually meet the clients there or meet them at their current house where they're moving out of and give them the key. That's also your opportunity for any kind of photo of the family in front of the house, any kind of testimonial, that kind of. A lot of times they're dressed down because they're moving, so it's not always a great day to do a photo. If they're like literally getting ready to load the truck, or the truck's loaded up most of the time at that point. All right, so that's kind of the closing process that we go through. And then we talk about follow-ups. We're just kind of the last couple minutes. So I usually will call to congratulate. Hey, great news. Hey, thanks for being here. I appreciate it, man.
Okay, one thing, on my last closing, I didn't have my buyer transfer the utilities into their name.
Oh,
So when
yeah.
I handed them the key,
No power.
no power.
Yeah, that's a good point too. So we would usually advise them to go ahead and transfer and then have it take effect in the buyer's name the day of closing. Because nothing's worse than moving in and not having hot water or the gas is not on or whatever. So that's a good point. And then, so I'm usually going to call them, hey, congratulations, excited for you, we're official. I'm going to come over now and give you the key. Do you want me to come to your current house or to the new house? I can meet you there. That will be the conversation. I will tend to call them. I'll do another to-do in Boomtown, which will be usually about 3 days after. And that will be a call, and that conversation is, hey, I just want to see how the move went. Is there anything you need, anything that you're missing that you can't find in boxes? We tend to we have these little buckets that have toilet paper and like dishwashing soap and plastic utensils, right? The stuff that's packed away that you're going to need when you order pizza when you're moving, or you have to-go food and you need napkins and plates. We have like little baskets like that we give. It may also be the time if you choose to do a personalized gift, closing gift, is when you might present that to them at, when you meet them at the property once it's closed. And then your 3-day follow-up, 2 to 3 days. I'm just checking on you, making sure the move went okay and anything you need. I'll typically then call and follow another week out after that, and then I'll put them on every quarter. So they'll get a call at closing day, a call 3 days later, a call a week after that. So call it 10 days after closing. And then if we have an event coming up or something, I'll call them before the next quarter. Otherwise, they would go into the next quarterly call. And then that follow-up call is going to be, again, any projects you're working on, anything you're doing, is there any, how are things going with the house, any projects you want to work on, or we'd like to invite you to our event, those kind of things.
So, prior to giving them keys, your conversation to them again?
Congratulations, we are official, and I'm so ecstatic for you. I'd like to come meet you. Would you like me to meet you at the new house? Or you want me to come to your current house? Where's the best place for you to get the key? And then I typically put I've got a real estate rockstar, these keychains I use, so I usually put it on that. You may choose a brand, some kind of keychain. Mine's like a guitar with a bottle opener, it's kind of different and cool. So I'll present the key on that keychain to them. You may choose to do something that's your brand on a keychain or not. Up to you. So that's the conversation.
Do you communicate with the other agent too in the transaction and build?
Yeah, a lot, and then we didn't touch on that a ton today. I think that part of good negotiations is developing a solid rapport with the other agent early, because it's amazing how much you can catch with honey, right, versus vinegar. So I think it's extremely important to, in my world, that's how I am with the whole industry. Like I have a lot of friends in the industry. I've developed those relationships because the odds are high we may have a cross sell at some point. And even if I don't know them, then I'm very polite. I want to find out what they need, what their sellers need, or what their buyers need. Because I notice that a lot of times with good rapport, agent to agent, we tend to have better negotiations overall when we're on the same team, essentially. So again, we're always shooting for win-win. It's got to be something where both people come away from the transaction feeling they both won. And that's really our number one goal with negotiating. So the answer is yes. Hallie, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Come talk to us about
right.
how everyone needs to choose Fidelity Home Warranty.
Absolutely. I'm going to just pass these around for you guys. So first off, what a great, awesome, amazing group. I have to apologize up front. Hopefully you guys will all eat, but I was told to plan for 6.
Oh,
so,
we had a big turnout today.
You guys have a huge turnout today. So I'm glad we're talking about the closing process. So
Yeah.
as Ty mentioned, my name's Callie Parker with Fidelity Home Warranty, and ordering a home warranty is a huge part of your closing process. So I can definitely be your contact for that. I think I'm passing around a brochure and another what we are doing right now with BPG Home Inspection. So we're giving your clients money back after the close if you do a Fidelity Home Warranty and a BPG Home Inspection. But I think we can all agree that, especially here in the great state of Arizona, number one thing is AC. So with Fidelity Home Warranty, you're not going to have any limits or restrictions on Freon. We also have no age restrictions. So regardless of the age of the home, we're not going to make your clients purchase extra coverage or say, well, it was worth, $4,000 20 years ago, we're gonna give you $50 for it now. So keep that in mind when you guys are suggesting home warranty companies to your buyers and sellers. We also have great sellers coverage. But again, number one thing with us, no limits, no restrictions on Freon, and no age restrictions. Do you guys have any questions with home warranty? I know it's kind of a love-hate relationship with home warranty, but I'm here, I'm local, I'm in Keller Williams a lot, so my cell phone's on everything. You guys can call me direct, your clients can call me direct. But yeah, do you guys have any questions about home warranty, things you've heard, things you wanna know?
Do you see the majority, in your world, is it more agents ordering it? Is it escrow ordering it?
No, escrow doesn't really like to order it.
We take the responsibility. In our world, our transaction manager does it. In most people's world, you're gonna order it on behalf of the client early on.
Yeah. And you guys can call me. I'm more than happy to order for you. You can get a little very quick account on our website and order yourselves, but I'm always more than happy. Escrow doesn't really like to do that. They don't want to take on the liability, which I agree. So when you're in that negotiations, put Fidelity Home Warranty in there. Start talking about home warranty companies and give them the brochure. Give them my number if they have questions. So it's a good thing to start up front and do that. So any questions, anyone? About anything? Okay, well, eat. Again, I apologize. The sandwiches are kind of small because, again, I was told to plan for 6. So eat for sure. It was great to be here. And again, my cell's on everything. If you guys ever have questions, give me a call.
Yay! Thank you.
We'll see you later.
All right, gang. Well, thanks for coming today. I appreciate it. Hopefully there's something valuable that you take away from that. And I appreciate your time. Yes?
Matt, when he was setting up, he mentioned that Wednesday's class was moved to Friday. So I'm gonna go down there and see if you can throw out an email.
Okay.
Or something, so just,
So no Wednesday, only Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not positive about that. And you'd be the one to know for sure. So maybe just let everybody else know. Yeah, that's right. Thanks for letting us know that for sure.
Yeah, I know, I probably won't check out my Instagram Oh, no, I didn't. Yes. Yeah, no, I remember on that one. Totally. No, it's always fun doing it on this one. Like, oh, there's a hot stick, I'm swimming.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm
Thanks for picking on me first. When you get it out of the way when you're nervous, the best thing to do is just get it over with. Get a little credit for being first.
Yeah, I admire it.
I appreciate that.
Hey, sitting in the back row doesn't excuse us from participating.
Yeah, totally.
Jeff told me I could sit back here with him, I wouldn't have to do it.
You don't remember Bob last week.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, exactly. We were way back last week, weren't we?
And we were not good at participating in the first round of standing.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, oh yeah, we'll go later. It's okay.
We're all tired. They can't even see us. No hurry.
Because we've been in the front every week.
Every
Hardly,
week.
I expect like,
Yeah,
I expect when
it's
people,
crazy.
it says Ty, like, oh, Ty's calling, and then, like, if it's my name, even my family, what the hell does he want?
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's
It's
I
so
go with
funny
a
how
wrong
you
attitude.
know. Yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true.
Harley's calling, I can hear her smile already through the phone.
A rock star. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Well, already lovely to see you
I
all.
don't believe I am. What? I gotta talk to my wife again. She's holding this in my
Oh,
phone.
that's
Holding
wonderful.
it here.
You go to what with your wife?
I have to discuss it with my wife.
Oh.
Christmas, you go?
I'm gonna go.
Oh,
Good.
that looks like
And I have to tell
I think should I like
you know,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Otherwise, they could just show us the food for sale.
Oh, shoot.
It's all good.
Yeah, no, I need to tell them. Are you
Um,
gonna go fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know to be, I mean, it's normal, but hopefully it's not gonna hold up the closing on this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe I'll just call everybody today and.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably, in your position, I would probably,
call the lender.
Well, I'm calling yes, and the list, I'm calling lender receiving unit, to be a prior to closing condition, or prior, they call it prior to
Yeah,
funding condition.
I talked to the, listing agent this weekend because the buyer was like, hey, do you remember that sewing machine in the garage? I'm interested in it, whatever, so I called the listing agent like, hey, is that available? And I did ask him about that issue with the, mandatory clause. Because they've been asking for it ever since last week. It seems like a little thing, it should have taken like 10 minutes, and it's becoming, it's like, they've been asking for it since last week. It's, since closing is supposed to be.
And your buyer's already signed it, because it should be, it should be signed by the buyer.
Yeah, we signed it weeks ago.
Yeah,
Like, if
yeah.
that, I mean, our part was done.
Uh-huh.
We're just waiting, I think, so the listing agent was like, explained to me, he's like, yeah, she's in her 90s, she doesn't do anything electronically, she's been sick and had a bunch of doctor's appointments, so he's kind of telling me why it's taking longer. But now that closing is Monday, like, if they get it back today, I mean, it can still.
It'll be tight, because they don't have the closing disclosure out now. If closing disclosure out today, then you'll be able to sign on Thursday. And it's supposed to close Monday?
Yeah.
That's still okay. You would need a CD out no later than probably tomorrow. Yeah, so the question is gonna be for the lender, can we move this to a prior to funding condition? If so, then they'll go ahead and issue the CD and you're good. If not, then it's gonna be the listing is gonna take that form over to the seller, have her sign it today and get it back. So one of those things, two things you probably have.
So if they make it a prior to funding condition, like, that allows it to move forward and do some, and do, okay.
No. That makes sense because in that scenario, the seller could sign it, which signs the rest of her documents.
Yeah.
They just add it, that's where we just add that into her, package, and then you get it signed that way. These are awesome.
Oh, good, you're welcome. I wanted to get a copy of your sign-in so I can reach out to
yeah, where is
everybody.
it? Everybody signed there?
Okay, cool, I'm gonna make a copy. Do you want me to just leave it down there, or do you want me to bring it back up?
You can leave it.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're so welcome, thanks guys.
Thank you.
You girls tore the open houses. Our team, I hooked it up this weekend, man. You guys did good.
Yeah, it was
I love
good.
your Instagram post of the clapping band.
Which, by the way, is still at the house,
Yeah, that's
because I couldn't fit everything in my truck.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Yeah, like, it's vacant,
It's just in
nobody's
the
there.
Oh, is it Monty?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So I haven't
And
been
it's
able
under
to.
contract, so it's not gonna be shown to anyone else, so we just need to pick it up before it closes.
Yeah, oh, cool.
Yeah, right in my neighborhood.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, only one.
I can't fit it in my car, but I'm sure we could put it in Jamie's, we just have to get the sign.
I just have to unload what's in there, which we already signed, open house flag and all that's in there, once I unload that, then I can pick up the guy.
Do you guys like that kind of tag teaming opens?
It was,
Yeah, it worked out, I think, really well, because it wasn't
Yeah, for
like
sure.
all on one person.
exactly, yeah, like she
Like-
did all the signs to put out in the beginning, and then I picked everything up at night, so it was like you weren't doing both, and we door knocked together, and that was helpful, and,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think it worked out really well, actually.
You like Dylan? You're doing a good job? What can you do better? Tell me. Uh-oh, he's hitting on you?
No, oh, no.
He's a bit of an ego inflation issue, I would say, or from what she reported, it wasn't my experience, because wasn't there with him that long. But according to the things he was saying to Corey, it sounds like he may need to be,
He was
his
like,
head
how many-
shrinked a little bit.
How many houses are you selling, or are you gonna sell next year? I was like, oh, my goal's 24. He's like, oh, I'm selling 18, but you know, it's only my first year. How many did you sell your first year? 7? And I was like, oh, dang, like, just dropping it like there.
Each top of it.
And then he was walking around, he's like, they call me MOL, Master of Leads. And then, but then when like the buyer's agent came in, he's like, I don't get it, who are they?
But he has no clue
It
what's
took
going on.
so long for me to try and
Okay.
explain to them what we were
What is
doing
that?
there as the listing agent, and what the buyer's agent was, and that they're not a part of Keller Williams. They
Mine's,
can do their own thing.
it's
Okay.
in now, but mine's an 801.
They're not with the
Okay.
Klaus team either.
Got it.
Well,
I mean, he'll learn more when he is in school, you know, he's not there yet, it just seems like he might have a rude awakening when that happens, which was my concern for him, that it might be kind of life shattering when he's like, whoa, what is all this stuff, like,
Well,
maybe I'm
he's
not
used to
gonna
his
be like,
friends
you know,
Who are like, whose friend was like driven sales, security and stuff, so he's made a lot of money off of that, and he's kinda in the same mindset.
yeah.
He showed up and tried to take my job.
It's Rebecca with an H, right? A K and an H.
Who did?
His Tony's friend.
Oh.
He was like, so, I'm gonna go get my real estate license tomorrow, so I just show them houses that they like, or what should I do? And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like,
Who was his buddy?
it was his manager, or whatever, of like the sales team that he was going to.
what was his
Or I
name,
guess-
Praise or something?
Praise.
His name was
Praise.
Praise or something?
His name was Praise.
I wasn't there for any of that good stuff, so.
Sure, yeah.
It was entertaining, but he helped a ton though with the signs, and it was good for him to kind of see where to put them and how many to put out. It's, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We used 17 at our, at Lucino, 17 signs on Saturday.
You did?
Wow.
Mhm.
Holy cow.
Did you have a good turnout?
No.
No?
We had like, I think we had 2 people that were repeats. They had been there the weekend before to see it.
Okay.
So they came back, and then we had one other person.
Okay. Cause you had that one person last weekend that was possibly gonna put an offer, right? And they just, didn't.
Well,
never
I
heard
don't
from
know,
them
they've
again?
been up.
I don't have, like,
There was one family, they were looking at, they had decided on a different house in the same subdivision, and, then they saw this one, like, well, maybe this one, so they were trying to decide. I don't know, I'd have to ask Andy, she's working that by me, to see if they decided about, what it said.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's nothing but positive. People just loved it, like when one of the neighbors came yesterday, she was looking because they may want to sell their house soon and they're in the neighborhood. Mhm. Yeah, and they were just going through, she was telling me everything, details of like the difference of her house layout and like what it looked like there and like all the things that they loved of like what was added and what was changed and you know, like they spent quite a bit of time and then just knowing the price point and stuff for them when they sell their house, you know, was important.
Were you able to talk to them this morning or you called them today about?
I texted that lady last night after Craig said that we'll talk more about it today.
Uh-huh.
And I just texted her real quick and said, you know, this is Jamie, we met earlier today, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget about you, and I have a message into the seller, and, I will get back to you sometime tomorrow, and she was very appreciative and said, thank you so much, and so.
There's people that have made offers and had to bail out.
Yeah,
because
twice,
of
where they've.
inspection issues.
Yeah, she said that the last two, inspections, the big points were roof, air conditioning stuff, and both of them refused to do the repairs, so they lost, so they're like, we don't wanna pay another inspection.
Yeah.
And like, we kinda just wanna know in advance what we're looking at here, cause they loved the house, like,
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
So, like I said to Craig, I don't really know what I should say or not, that's why I just left it.
Okay.
And, you know, here's the situation, so,
Yeah, understandable.
yeah.
Alright,
Yeah.
so you
So those were the week-
talking about today and
Yeah.
just let her
Like
know
Saturday.
for it?
Yeah, like I don't know what his schedule is today or anything, but I was gonna head to the office now and see if I could finish up with him and what I can find out, so. Yeah, and that thank you cards, yeah.
Going to be written.
You get a vote from this weekend?
Yeah.
No, she flew out, she and my daughter flew out, and me and my two sons and dog drove out. Cause you can't fly pets in here during
Guys,
this
you just
June,
sit right
you
there.
can't, like, I think from May to October, you can't fly animals.
What do you have going on
It's too hot.
today, Ty?
Oh, you must have.
I'm going back to the office, here pretty quickly, and then I've
I
got,
had a moving company, which I wouldn't
an
recommend.
appointment at 2, and then I gotta walk through
It was like one of
four
those pond
for
ones, but
this
it
week.
was a shell.
And then,
You just say you're there,
just calls mostly.
Yeah.
I only have about a 2-hour window today for phone calls, so I'm gonna go back pretty quick and, work on that, and 2 o'clock.
Yeah, she got it earlier last night.
And then have time to about 3:30, and then it'll be in South Orlando for the final walkthrough at 4.
Okay. Okay.
And then I'm out for a while, I'm at a bowl tomorrow,
Oh.
and then I've got some flying to Florida on Wednesday morning.
Oh.
And I'll be there Wednesday to Wednesday.
Mhm. Oh, wow,
Oh,
we'll be gone for a
you're gonna be gone a
while.
week.
We got off a day late.
What are we supposed to do?
So they want
Well,
to make
Wednesday's
it
gonna be cool, actually.
We're supposed to go from,
We're doing, Showing Academy. Where we're basically gonna divide, everybody's gonna meet at 8:30 for the company-wide,
Yeah.
team meeting.
Mhm.
And then,
straight through the whole city.
Twyla and Suzanne are gonna take one group each, we're gonna split the agents who are there in half. And we're doing like a field trip.
Oh.
And we're going to 2 different houses, and so and each house will have half who's gonna lead the group through
My wife and I lived
a
there.
tour, like how you would show the house, the
Okay.
buyers.
Mhm.
And then we'll have feedback form created last night, which is like what you did well, what you can work on, you know, what you can really improve. And so everybody will have feedback forms for each time they go.
This is all my guys.
5 or 6 probably.
Okay.
And then we're gonna spend half the group will take turns walking through that house. And then they're gonna go to the other house.